Clerk will call the roll.
Glenn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Devin Allen, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Pickus, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Constitutes a quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation today will be delivered by Pastor Travis Pitcock from Christ Lutheran Church in Fort Worth. After the invocation, please remain standing for our pledges. Thank you very much for coming out.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, gracious Lord, we give you thanks and praise that you are a kind and benevolent God, that you have created us and recreated us in Jesus, and you provided for everything we need in this world and our eternal life to come. As we gather together today here to celebrate and to take care of this wonderful county that we call home, we ask that you bless those who govern over us. Bless us all and remind us of your words in Romans chapter 13, that you have created government for our blessing as a gift, to maintain order and good justice, to protect and provide for all creation and your people. We thank you for those who govern over us, and we ask that you bless them and keep them in your care as they lead us and provide for the continuation of a wonderful place to live that we call Tarrant County. We also pray for our first responders, especially for our Tarrant County Sheriff's Department, especially this week as they mourn the loss of one of their own. Be with them and keep them in your care. We commend ourselves into your hands this day, and we ask this boldly and confidently in the name of Jesus Christ, our Savior. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Thank you, Pastor, for coming out today. Good morning.
Good morning. Members of the Court, we have several announcements this morning. The first one deals with purchasing, and this will be item 8H1. This is bid 2019-104. We are going to hold that for 1 week. Also, as it relates to the agenda today, as we did last week, we're going to go somewhat out of order. If we would, we'll go through the agenda through proclamations and the consent agenda. But when we get into reports and business, rather than hearing first from the county administrator, we're going to go to the Sheriff's Department and hear item 1 under that particular section. And then finally, members of the court, just remind you that Thursday we have an IT steering committee. This is at the Family Law Center, but this meeting will start at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, let's chat about that. I know that was going to be where's the sheriff? Is the sheriff? What time is the funeral for your sergeant?
It is noon on Thursday, sir.
Okay. So that I just say that.
I think we can handle that in an hour to an hour and a half meeting.
Hour sounds good to me.
Like I said, about an hour meeting.
Okay. All right. Well, I wanted to be sure because I wasn't. I thought it was at noon, but I wasn't sure it was noon. So.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular meeting of June the 11th.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion second. Any discussion? Please vote. Okay. Y'all need to push the buttons. Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Brooks, I believe you have a proclamation.
I do have a proclamation regarding the Fort Worth Juneteenth celebration. It's already presented. I move ratification.
Second. We have a motion second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And secondly, Your Honor, every year companies in Tarrant County engage in partnerships with their school districts through the Vital Link program. This program gives youngsters a glimpse at real life work experience. For the past several years, going back to at least 2012, I believe, the Linebarger firm in Fort Worth has sponsored a group of Vital Link kids for the couple of week period that the program lasts during the summer. And one of their points of investigation is always county government. So we have the opportunity to host these kids every summer. And I'd like to recognize Steve Meeks, the Jefe over at Linebarger, and the partner who has generally taken on the responsibility of being the kid wrangler, Mr. Corey Fickus. We've got a group of kids here with us this morning that I would like to introduce. And when I call your name, come on up here on the podium so we can get a picture with all of the commissioners. So, they got teachers with them. I don't have their names, but y'all know who you are, and thank you for bringing them. Tania Shaw from McClung Middle School. Charla Hamilton, Hanley Middle School. I'm not getting any response. Does that mean they're not here? Jeffrey Eldridge, Hanley Middle School. Come on up, Jeffrey. Come on this way. Hold on to that. Stand right there. Davian Wiley, Hanley Middle School. All right. Ladarius Jackson, Hanley Middle School. Draylon Creer, Hanley Middle School. Ayana Clay, Jacquet Middle School. Vincent Petrello, Riverside Middle School. And Sean Johnson What school are you from, Sean?
Jean McClung.
Jean McClung Middle School. Could I get the court to surround these kids and let's get a picture? You're kind of short, Judge. Your chest.
Well, I'm vertically challenged too. Smile. They'll be flashing for a long time. So.
These are their teachers. Thank you all.
You had not seen the three flashes yet, so you got to see at least three flashes before you leave. One, two, right.
Three. Thank you, kids. We hope you enjoy your stay in county government.
Congratulations.
Steve.
Yeah, I like it. I don't know. We have a little here in a minute. Nothing's. I'm messing with my chairs here. I don't know which one chair. Yeah, this is mine. You're way down. Well, just hit that little button down there. Bring yourself up.
All right, guys.
Now, did you move to?
Move to receive and file that presentation.
Second. We have a motion second to receive and file. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Allen.
I'm going to go ahead and read this memorial resolution into the record, and we're working with the Grand Prairie Police Department to make sure that this resolution is presented to the family of Officer Castañeda in a way that honors his memory. Whereas the family, friends, and brothers and sisters in blue of Officer Albert Ramirez A.J. Castañeda Jr. are deeply saddened by his tragic passing on June 7, 2019. And whereas his untimely death took a loving father, son, brother, exemplary police officer, and a brave and noble person from this world. And whereas, beginning in 2000, Officer Castañeda served for 8 years as a member of the U.S. Coast Guard and for 6 years as a Tarrant County Sheriff's Deputy through 2013. And whereas, he then fulfilled his lifelong dream to return to the community where he grew up when he was hired as an officer of the Grand Prairie Police Department in January of 2014. And whereas, his love for where he grew up and his desire to give back resulted in him visiting neighborhood children each week and treating them to pizza. And whereas, no matter where he served, Officer Castañeda made a positive impact on the many lives he touched. And whereas Officer Castañeda leaves a legacy of being a tenacious model police officer with a tireless work ethic and a kind and humble man with a servant's heart and a passion to protect and to serve. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, pay tribute to the memory of a beloved and honorable man who we lost far too soon and whose courage we will never be forgotten. Further, we extend our heartfelt sympathy to the members of his family, his brothers and sisters in blue, and his many friends for their loss. In witness whereof, we have hereunto set our hands and caused the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this 18th day of June, 2019. And with that, I move for passage.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And just to be clear, we will have a memorial resolution in honor of Sergeant Shepard, who we lost over the weekend.
Yes, and I would like to ask that we close the court today in memory of Sergeant Keith Shepard. Sheriff, I believe they were going to open a fund at the credit union. Has that been done?
It has been done. I got mine in yesterday.
Okay, super. So, thank you. And I again want to thank you and your department for the way that was all handled. And I want to publicly want to thank Fort Worth. They were there, as was Arlington's. I know Arlington's chaplain, I believe, was over. The outpouring from the surrounding cities and the departments was really something to be admired. And I know it happens whenever we have an officer that is down. But I just want to tell you how much I appreciate the way you and your department handled that. I was over at Harris yesterday, and the folks commented on how respectful and how impressed they were with the way your folks acted anytime there was a family, throughout the whole process, but especially as the medical providers were moving to help, and as the family was helping, the respect that was shown to everyone. So again, thank you very, very much, and we appreciate that, and I know we're all thinking of the family. And again, as you said earlier, the service will be at noon on Thursday at the Wade Fielder Road Baptist. Okay, Fielder Road Baptist Church in Arlington, there on 303. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, with that, Mr. Manius.
Your Honor, we're going to ask that you all approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Members of the court, if we could pause just a moment. I know that there's some members of the media that would like to put their mics up here. Our internal system is not working that they can feed off of, so if you want to do that, you need to do that now. Members of the court, if we can now go to item 8I1. This is under the Sheriff's Department. Just make a comment and lay this out for you. I think the sheriff wants to make some comments. I also, Your Honor, if you were going to make any comments about audience participation, we might do that after I lay this out. Okay. So, members of the court, as you know, last week we heard a lengthy testimony and comments from members of the community as it relates to the 287G program. On item I1, this is action concerning the addendum to the current Memorandum of Understanding. As you know, the current Memorandum of Understanding ends at the end of this month, and that was a 2-year agreement. What this addendum does, it authorizes the extension of that MOA for 1 year. So the term of this would be, it would start June 30th, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. So it is a 1-year addendum. With that, Your Honor, I'll ask if you have comments first, and then we'll ask the sheriff to come up.
Again, I want to tell everybody I appreciate very much everyone coming out and voicing their thoughts and their feelings last week. We are here again today, and today we will take action on this particular measure. And I guess, you know, we've got a number of requests to speak. I guess the request that I would make is, if you spoke last week, and if you're simply here to again state basically what you stated last week. We went through about 3 hours of testimony last week. And I would appreciate you considering letting those folks who may not have been here last week, or if you have something that you feel like you didn't get a chance to say last week and you want to do that this week, then I would say let's do that. But what I'm just simply asking is, let's go through the process. Again, let's be very respectful and allow whoever is at the microphone at that particular time to make whatever comments they wish to make. And I hope that throughout the process that it will be that we'll have a very civil dialogue, and that we will respect the folks who are here and who've taken time to be here today. But again, and again, this is a request that if you spoke last week and if you're simply going to restate what you said, please consider. I have got a list of everybody that spoke last week, whether you were for or against, and we're doing the same thing today as we go through the process. I know many of you have called in. I know many of you have emailed in. I know that each one of our offices has received a number of calls with regards to that. So, again, as I mentioned last week, I appreciate very much the fact that you've come out and that you have voiced your opinions with regards to this particular issue. With that, Mr. Manius, I'll, ask the sheriff to come forward. Morning.
Good morning, sir, and thank you for having me. Commissioner Allen, thank you for that beautiful resolution. That was beautiful. And thank the court for closing for a moment in honor of Sergeant Shepard. And I'll reiterate this probably several times. The country, the state, and the county lost a great public servant, and he has had an impact on our community. With all that said, I just wanted to reiterate a few points this morning that before we vote, is that a lot of rumors and stuff get out that we are not out in the community conducting traffic stops because of 287G and immigration enforcement. We are not conducting any type of raids or targeting exercises. And we're absolutely not racial profiling. This is something that happens inside the brick and mortar of the jail with Class B misdemeanors and above. And so one of the things that I did in just the last week is having some conversations with immigrations and getting some data from them saying, okay, what is happening here? And just putting things in perspective, from June of last year until through June of this year, throughout the total Tarrant County area, 793 people have had detainers put on them. Out of that, the 287G program has completed 485 detainers representing 27 different countries, people from 27 different countries. Municipalities, on their own accord, have asked for detainers and gotten detainers on 264 of those people. And the balance was done by ICE and other venues. Is that of the 485, so some things that we know about them. 173 have been processed through and given court dates. And those court dates extend out to 2023 or 2024, so they can operate in the United States and have due process. 83 of these people have voluntarily deported. 36 are repeat deportees, so they're being held and could face federal charges and go to federal prison on that, are deported. Out of this, by the immigration judge, 6 of them were giving relief, meaning that because of some humanitarian reason within the discretion and the compassion of the judicial officer in charge, he gave them a residency, a type of residency. Now, to keep 287G in perspective, of the 485 people we detained, in that same time period from June of last year through June of this year, Tarrant County Sheriff's Office booked into jail 58,558 people. So they make up less than 1% of the bookies. And there was some conversations on that 287 was affecting the processes in booking. So we randomly chose 5,000 inmates pre-287 last year, and over a 30-day period, 30 different days, and checked what was our booking time pre and what was our booking time post-implementation. Pre-implementation of 287G, the booking time was 5 hours and 55 minutes on average. Of over post-287G, it's 6 hours and 8 minutes. Net of 13 minutes. In 2019, our numbers are rising in the jail, so that might account for that 13 minutes. In talking to all shifts, first shift and second shift primarily, and the people in charge of our booking, I asked for honest impacts of 287G into not only the boots on the ground, but the supervisors. It has little or no impact. And I would also just say that we went through all the people that have been in our custody, and we ran manually criminal histories on each one of those. And we can't release that information, but we can tell you with certainty that 70% of the people we have in custody have multiple repeated offenses. They have been in our jail before. They have not been detained except for this time. And on that, I would also say to you is that with that 70%, we do know if they go back into the community statistically, because they've already shown it, that 70% of them will reoffend. And as you saw, that the majority of people we hold is violent and felons. And with that said, I would ask that, and I know the cost is another issue, and certainly there's a number of variables out there on cost, but there's not any variables on principle of law. And we're a sovereign nation, and we're a land that rule by principles of law. And I believe the safety of the community has been enhanced, and I continue to believe that just based on the reoffending route. And I appreciate your time, and I would like for you to pass this.
A question?
Yes, sir.
If you're ready for a question.
I'm ready for questions.
Does ICE provide any, do y'all bill ICE for anything? Are they providing any kind of funds that come back to the county?
Well, we heard about those SCAP funds. Am I saying that right? SCAP funds that we do get and reimbursed for, but that comes from the state, which I assume also is trickled down from the federal government. But
it does not come from the state; it comes from the federal government.
Okay.
And we actually have a private vendor because it's such a complicated type of a deal. I think we turned that information over to a private vendor that bills for that.
We contract on an annual basis for them to run the numbers for us. You're correct, John.
The last reimbursement we got was for what period?
2017.
How much was it?
$339,159.
And when do we normally send those invoices in?
We send the report in the end of May.
So the end of this past month, we sent in the invoice for 2018?
2019. May 21st, we sent in the 2019 submission.
Well, what time frame does that cover?
That covers 2017 through 2018. July 1st of 2017 through June 30th of 2018.
And how much?
Okay, no, a year later. It's a year back. So 2017 to 2018.
And how much was that for?
We do not know until.
But what was the estimate that?
We don't have an estimate for 2019. We have an estimate for 2018, which we have not received either.
Okay,
well, how much is that?
Approximately $500,000.
So we've gotten 330. We've got 500,000 out that they owe us.
Approximately, it can change because they go back over the numbers, and so it's not definite.
I understand. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen.
Any other questions of the sheriff at this time?
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff.
If possible, maybe you want to come back up after everything is said and done. Thank you.
Okay. Again, when you come up, I guess I will start off. I hope that if you don't feel like you have something new to say, that you'll just pass on coming forward to speak, and you will simply just say, you can either say you're for or against, although we already have that recorded from that perspective. The first one I show is a Geraldine Jackie Cox. So I guess,
Your Honor, I might say we do have some in 504C.
okay. The next one I have is That's okay. No problem. Come on down. Come on forward.
Thank you so much for giving me your time and your attention. I sent you a letter with attachments. Have you all received some of those this morning?
Yes, we got those
Wonderful.
this morning.
Ms. Cox,
All right.
would you pull the microphone down, please?
Better?
Much better.
Thank you. Okay. If you look at the attachments behind my letter, the first one that should be on it, I think said Cox, page 3, you'll see a form that the Texas Commission on Jail Standards receives every month from the Sheriff's Office. Bill Webern's signature is on that form. I don't know that he signed it because I didn't see him, but it's a report from the Sheriff's Office. The Texas Commission on Jail Standards, by law, must collect data that shows how many days persons on ICE detainers, I'm out of breath because I ran to get here, are in your jail. So you can sort of see that on day 1 of April of 2018, there were 257 people on ICE detainer warrants, and each day shows a daily census. And then when you get down to the bottom, you have a total prisoner days. That's how many days you had ICE detainees in your jail. The Jail Standards Commission has a formula for discerning how much that costs you, and that formula is set out in the letter. If you look at page 5 in my little letter to you, it says that what you do is you take your annual jail budget, you divide that by the number of beds in your jail, and you divide that number by 365. And that gives you the average daily cost of holding an inmate. So for the period in April of 2018, your average daily cost for holding one inmate was $460, and your total housing cost for the ICE detainees during the month of April was $347,530. That kind of pattern shows consistently through the reports that were filed with the Jail Standards Commission that Sheriff Wayburn signs. So I think that the formula they used to present data to you last week on how much it costs to hold these people pretty grossly understated the actual cost. As the sheriff mentioned, he doesn't let out data willingly or easily about what's going on, but I did get from Jail Standards Commission these figures, and I want you to look at exhibit, page 4 of Cox exhibit. And what this kind of shows you is a pattern of holding inmates on ICE detainers. And I could give you lots more detail, but my little printer didn't do so well. I can give you more on if you want this. But on, let's take Abraham, Ramos Cruz Abraham, because I can say that name, number 2. He was put in to the jail on July 4th of 2017, and an ICE detainer warrant dropped on him that very same day. So as of 3/31/2018, this says date transferred, but I think that this really just means that on 3/31/2018, he was still there, and he was in 31 days during the month of April 2018. And when you start adding up all the days that all these inmates were incarcerated, that's how you get back to your number, total numbers in your formula. What is really happening with respect to when these people get in and get out or what they're charged with is kind of a mystery. I know that when they're first booked in, everybody goes into the computer and they stay there for a little while. But after 10 days, the computer jettisons the names of these people, and then you can't find them. And family members can find them by communicating with ICE, maybe, because ICE maybe will have them in their computers, and maybe they won't. But it's a big source of anxiety for people who work with ICE that they can't always find people. So sometimes going into a jail is like being a desaparecido in Mexico. You walked into the jail and you disappeared. Where you went, how long you went there, what happened to you is not known. And that's what happens to you when you get deported by ICE. Okay.
Your 3 minutes are up.
Thank you. 30 seconds?
No, because you're actually at 5 minutes.
Okay, I'll quit. But I do want you to notice that the most recent stats from the jail that were with Jail Standards Commission came out on 4/1/2019. That month, you had 344 inmates still there then at a cost of $345,000 a month. So this is not cheap, and they're not bonding out like they would if they weren't on ICE detainers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cox. No. All right. We're not going to be here all day. If that continues, if we continue to celebrate one side or the other, then we will limit debate and we'll cut it off pretty quick. And I am going to respond a little bit as we go through with the various ones. And Sheriff, you're welcome to make comments also from that perspective. But one of the things I think you need to understand in listening to the numbers you just listened to is there may be an immigration hold placed on someone when they're booked in. But there's still other charges that they're booked in for. And oftentimes they stay in jail until those other charges have been resolved one way or the other. And so they're on a detention hold the entire time, but they're not being held simply because there is a detention hold placed on them. There are many, if they do not bond out, they are there for the completion till they get to trial, till they complete the trial, until something has happened with them one way or another. So it's not fair to assume that because there was a detention hold placed on them when they were booked in, that that's the only reason they're remaining in jail from the time that happened. So we're going, people can come up and they can make their statements. And Sheriff, if you've got anything else to add, we're not going to just allow statements to be made and there not be any response at all to those.
Judge, you explained it very clearly. The other portion of that is that we cannot, you look on our website, see somebody there, we cannot legally state that there's a detainer. That's against federal law. So we don't do that. We follow the law. And it is our experience, and you're welcome to come to the jail. We'll set up a tour for you, and you can see exactly what happens is at the end of the state charges, the average time of release to ICE is 12 to 16 hours. So they've finished with our charges first. Some of those people, of course, were released to prison system and other counties that have charges. Thank you, Judge.
Next is Daryl Easton.
My name is Daryl Easton. I live in Euless, Texas, also the Republican Party chair of Tarrant County. I just want to voice my support for this memorandum. I'd like to see extended to 3 or 4 years instead of just 1 year. But I'm also a retired Air Force veteran. I served in El Salvador for 2 years and 4 months, and that was from October of '88 through January of '91. At that time, there was a civil war down there, and so I relied upon El Salvadorian citizens to protect me as I traveled through the country. On various occasions, we were required to have a Salvadorian military person. So in that regard, I learned great appreciation for the Latino community, as well as other foreign nationals when I served in Thailand. And I believe the United States welcomes immigrants, but illegal immigration, and that's the reason they would have ICE detainers, is because they first ignored our laws coming into this country, And obviously, they violated laws while they're here, U.S. laws, while they're in country. And I believe this is an adequate program, and it's not racist. I agree with Sheriff Wayborn that we treat all illegal immigrants the same under the law. The law is blind to their ethnic and racial background, and as long as we continue to apply it that way, I believe that the law is what we need to live by. Enforce our laws, even federal laws. We assist the federal government in doing their laws. So in that regard, I do hope that we will approve this agreement and this memorandum. Thank you.
Please. Next, I have Joanna Cardoza. I believe did you speak last week?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you want to speak again?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Good morning, County Commissioners and Judge. My name is Joanna Cardoza. I live in Precinct 2, Devin Allen's precinct. When elected officials such as yourself are in our beloved communities campaigning, you talk about being, about bringing transparency, representing the community, and for us to hold you accountable. Well, I'm here to hold you accountable today. How can you vote to fund a program in which you do not have all the ingredients that go into Sheriff Wayburn's secret sauce? How can you trust the sheriff to be transparent and accountable when the answers to your questions that he provided showed no effort to answer your concerns? You all instead had to pull information for him and explain to him how some elements of the program work. His steering committee has no members from the impacted community. It is made up of his chief of staff, public information officer, and ICE program coordinator. What the 287G program will do is make an already vulnerable members of the community more unsafe. I ask that you please vote no and not renew this 287G program. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is James Ashby.
Restate my support for renewal for the effectiveness reasons previously stated and yield.
Thank you. Mindia Whittier.
Mindia Whittier. I live in Precinct 4. Who in this room believes that we deserve the highest standard of good governance from our elected officials in Tarrant County? Please raise your hand if you think we deserve the highest standard. What does good governance look like? I think it looks like elected officials who ensure they've received accurate information about a program's cost and efficacy before they vote on granting a contract extension. And it looks like elected officials who perform due diligence rather than relying exclusively on information from a biased source, like a sheriff whose re-election is tied to how you vote on that one issue. Does anyone else think that sounds like good governance? That's not what we're seeing here. At best, what we are witnessing is shoddy, careless, two-bit representation. You don't have any data backing up the claim that 287G makes Tarrant County safer. All you've got is a spreadsheet that proves for 2 months out of 2 years, no ICE holds were placed on someone exclusively for a Class C misdemeanor. And it doesn't even tell us whether those folks are actually getting deported once they're detained by ICE under 287G. Nor do you have data to show that 287G made other communities safer. Unlike Wayborn, we have provided data credibly demonstrating that 287G actually makes communities less safe. But he wears a uniform and a cowboy hat and talks about the Bible and fatherless children, so what he says must be true, right? You also don't have a cost summary that anyone can trust is accurate. Even Commissioner Fickus said he doesn't know if he trusts the sheriff's numbers. That presentation last week was like watching the man behind the curtain in The Wizard of Oz, all smoke and mirrors. What about performing due diligence? Have any of you checked with the police departments in Tarrant County to see if they are experiencing the same trend that's being seen across the country, which is a decrease in Latinos reporting crimes? Have you checked with local nonprofits that serve child victims of abuse and victims of domestic violence to see if there has been a decline in Latinx individuals disclosing abuse? Both of those would give us a more accurate picture if 287G is making our community less safe, because it would show if bad actors are being left on the streets to commit more crimes. Have any of you asked Wayborn to provide a source for his claim that 287G increased safety in other communities? I did. His office didn't answer. Have you talked to law enforcement or elected officials in communities that canceled their 287G agreements to find out why? Have you conducted an audit of the 287G program costs or pulled the racial profiling reports for Dalworthington Gardens during the years when Wayborn was police chief, so you'll know if a program that's proven to increase racial profiling is dangerous in his hands? You get paid $172,419 annually. At that rate, Tarrant County should be receiving first-class representation, not negligent representation. Yet if any one of you commissioners votes to renew 287G based on the contradictory and incomplete information at hand, that's exactly what we are getting for our tax dollars. And if I were you, I would be ashamed.
Leah Walmsgas. Make sure she's not in the back room. Leah Walmsgas.
Lee Walmsgas.
Lee Walmsgas. Francis. Whoop, there's Lee. Sorry about that. Welcome.
Thank you. Sorry I couldn't hear you for all the clapping and the celebrating in the back room. My name is Lee Wamscons, and I'm here today to ask you to do the right thing. We are a constitutional republic that exists on the rule of law. Extending 287G supports our law enforcement officers that put their lives on the line for us every day. And unlike some of the hateful comments, I thank God every day Sheriff Wayborn is my sheriff. Renewing this program gets repeat offenders off our streets. It is in no way discriminatory, and it is the responsibility of this body to protect and defend the laws of our land. Listen, I was an INS caseworker for the 104th Congress. I know what it's like to go through this process to become a legal citizen. I have walked through it from beginning to end with hundreds of people. It's not easy, but it's the right thing to do if you want to be a citizen of this country. The fact that there's any opposition to keeping Tarrant County families safe through extending 287G is just beyond me. I am, again, this is in no way discriminatory, and I'm asking you to support this program. It is your responsibility to keep us safe. And if you're voting along party lines, that is what should be shameful. This should not be a Republican or a Democrat issue. We're talking about people who've been criminals in our country. And if they're here illegally, they're already a criminal. But if they're here illegally and they're breaking our laws, get them out of our country. Thank you.
Next is Lori Chambliss, followed by Francis, I think that's Sharp, on Timberlake Drive in South Lake.
Good morning, Lori Chambliss, Roy Brooks Commissioner. I just learned that. I didn't know, so this is good. Last week I listened to presentations regarding 287G shared with our Tarrant County Commissioners and even delivered my own, but this week I want to address my Latino brothers and sisters. I heard your cries, I heard your fears. Did you know that fear is mentioned 45 times in the Bible? Did you know fear is an emotion, and for there to be an emotion, there must be a thought? Did you know you choose your thoughts, and because you choose your thoughts, you choose your emotions? Did you know that everything in our universe is a vibrational energy, is energy of vibrational frequency? Even your thoughts, your emotions, and yes, your words. Did you know that God spoke into existence everything God said? You manifest in your life with the words you speak over it. You may think that you're in your Egypt. Affirm, I am the head and not the tail. You may think you're in your Babylon. Affirm, I am a blessing. I am blessed coming in. I am blessed going out. You may think that you're in your Holocaust. Affirm, I can do all things through Christ Jesus who strengthens me. When Jesus sent his disciples out to preach the gospel, he told them, whoever will not receive you or listen to your words, shake the dust from your feet. Today, if the Commissioner's Court does not listen, I hope you dance. Promise me you'll give faith a fighting chance. Never settle for the path of least resistance. When you come close to selling out, reconsider. Living life may mean taking chances, but they're worth it. Shake their dust from your feet and affirm, I will not fear 287G. I am a child of the Most High God. If God be for me, what can 287G do against me? God has not given you a spirit of fear. He's not given me a spirit of fear. So I want to ask, if you're afraid of the immigrants, illegal or legal, what is your source of fear? Because it's not God.
Francis Sharp. Yeah, well, you can tell me how I should have pronounced it, because I know I didn't pronounce it right. Followed by Megan Pegler.
My name is Frances Charlie. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you. I would like to point out to you that Sheriff Wayburn was elected by a majority of the citizens, and he ran on immigration reform and upholding our laws as far as immigration goes. I think you know how our county feels about this by how he won in the electorate. I'm very concerned to see that 23% of the ICE detainees were DWIs. 46% of them were either homicides, sexual assaults, or assaults on children, or aggravated assaults. This concerns me greatly to have these people in our community. And it's easy to say we don't want ICE detainees, but if I lost one of my children or one of my loved ones or one of my friends because one of these people were not detained, I would have to look at you and say, why? So I encourage you to continue support for this initiative for another year. I'd like to see it be longer. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Megan Pegler.
Hi there, I'm Reverend Megan Pegler, an ordained Disciples of Christ minister and admissions associate at Bright Divinity School. All through Scripture, we hear calls to show hospitality, welcome the stranger, love our neighbor. The safety of our community has not been enhanced when people are too afraid of law enforcement to report crimes. Context matters. We are living in a time in which ICE rounds up people who have committed no crimes other than overstaying their visas or seeking asylum. A Lutheran pastor in Wisconsin, Betty Rendon, was just deported to Colombia a few weeks ago. She's a minister, community leader, mother and grandmother, and a doctoral student who fled her home country because she faced death threats. She was targeted and deported by ICE. Context matters. This unnecessary policy demonizes our neighbors. Immigrant communities are living in fear, and this is not right. Let us show compassion, respect, concern, and love for all of our neighbors. Please vote no to renewing this MOU.
Thank you. Jean Lott. Followed by Theresa Lim.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Or it's afternoon now, I guess. No, it's still morning. Still morning. Okay. I'm a little nervous. I really just want to say I am supporting the renewal of this addendum for another year, and because I just believe that the citizens, that our citizens and our United States citizens of Tarrant County, we need to be protected, and I believe that people that come into our country illegally are illegally here, and they need to be deported, or things need to be figured out. If they need asylum, they need asylum, but they are not coming in legally. A lot of drugs are coming in illegally, a lot of crime, and I was looking at the charges that when they were currently 280 inmates in custody with ICE detainees, and 11 homicides, sexual assaults, 49 assaulted, aggravated assault, 70, just the numbers, and then DWI is 65, and oftentimes when there's DWIs, there's maybe been an injury to other citizens too in those arrests. But I do support our sheriff, and I want to see that we do continue the amendment, the addendum for another year. It would be great if it was another 2 years or whatever. So thank you very much. I'm a little nervous.
Thank you very much for coming out and taking your time. Theresa Lim.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Theresa Lim, and my address is 702 River Place Drive. I live in Precinct 1. Last week was my first time at Commissioner's Court, and after learning a bit more about others' concerns surrounding 287G and trying to do some personal research on the issue to answer some questions I had, I just wanted to say that I appreciate the complexity and weight of the decision you face today, and thank you all for tackling this topic with us. I'd also like to thank Sheriff Wayburn for the care he took in sharing this new data with us. I know that this is a very personal issue for many in the room, and hope for the best outcome for us all. As I'm relatively new to the conversations that have taken place here, I don't know if some of this has been mentioned before last week, so I apologize if this has been said before, but just in case, I just wanted to raise the question of whether or not lawfully present immigrants would also eventually be put at more risk through the 287G program. I found an article published last month in Reuters that seems to affirm this. They've asserted that there exists a Department of Justice draft regulation that targets immigrants that use certain public benefits. Reuters poses that this could affect green card holders who are legally entitled to use public benefits soon after their arrival in the United States. Included in the list of public benefits in question is assistance given to disabled and elderly individuals. Quote, the effort to tighten the rules could affect thousands of immigrant veterans, refugees, and asylees who are eligible to receive many benefits without time restrictions. Even more concerningly, this DOJ draft is based on a similar plan by the Department of Homeland Security. These drafts are being seriously considered in a comprehensive plan that would also potentially bar refugees and asylees from admission based on disability. This article concerns me especially because it appears to cast aside immigrant veterans who may have become disabled while serving the country, and seems to discriminate against refugees and asylees who are disabled or possibly other immigrants with developing illnesses. According to ICE's 287G page, the 287G program enhances the safety and security of communities by creating partnerships with state and local law enforcement agencies to identify and remove aliens who are amenable to removal from the United States. Please do correct me if I'm wrong, but I personally saw no information that 287G was limited to undocumented immigrants. Even if this draft does not pass, that such legislation could turn 287G against veterans, refugees, and asylees too brings into question some of the logic used to justify its use. It also brings to light more true intentions regarding the potential use of 287G in the future. It also shows how supplementary legislation can turn 287G into something worse. Also, as it stands, according to Title 8, Section 1227 on deportable aliens, legal immigrants are already deportable in some cases, such as on grounds of moral turpitude, for which Class A and B misdemeanors can apply. In supplementary legislation or not, as mentioned by others, even limiting targets to those with Class B misdemeanors and above still casts a wide net indeed. Class B misdemeanors in Texas, if I'm not mistaken, include failing to pay child support, possession of 2 ounces or less of marijuana, gifting a quarter of an ounce or less of marijuana, stealing cable service, running away from an officer trying to arrest you because you're scared of them, and lying to an officer about your name and address because you're scared of them. Also, is it true that Thank you.
You have a career in commercials with legal. I know you're very nervous, and I appreciate you very much coming out today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Margaret Bochart. Peggy, is that you? Margaret? Yes. Thought it might be.
I didn't hear you. I'm sorry. I wanted to speak again, not only to Judge Whitley and the commissioners, but to all those in attendance who are against implementing 287G. I would say to all of you, all people are equal, but not all ideas are equal. I would say to you who are against 287G, I believe you are well-meaning, but you have not thought through the consequences of your ideas. Our country that you want to come to is so great because of the laws instituted by our founding fathers. As I said last week, our country was an experiment of allowing people to be free to rule themselves. It's the freest country in the world, but it won't work if people will not rule themselves. We can't just have people come here because they feel they are owed a better life. Don't come here to change us. That has been happening. The change that you are wanting will not be to your liking. We are becoming a lawless society, a spoiled society. Many think that whatever they want, they ought to be able to have. That is like a spoiled child. Of course, we all think that, but that is not life, and that is not even good. Spoiled children are not happy. They are depressed. Some people, for their own benefit, like to encourage that natural spoiled nature in people for their own advantage. They don't really care about the person. I have been active in politics since 1988. I will be 79 years old. Yes, I'm elderly, in August. I am a fiscal and social conservative. I am for freedom to be law-abiding under the Constitution. I believe many of our laws are not for the benefit of the people. I believe that no political party is perfect because people are not perfect. We are all flawed. I'm a Republican because I believe it best represents what I believe, but I am frequently a critic of some of its policies. I would say that I'm not known for thinking. I'm known for thinking for myself and not a follower of any group. All law-abiding people are welcome to come to our country. Part of being law-abiding is to come here legally. I asked one of the speakers against 287 if I wanted to live in her house because it was so beautiful.
30 seconds.
Would she let me? She respectfully said something like, if Jesus said so. I should have asked her, if I were here illegally and was accused of being a child molester or some other crime, would you let me come and live in your house? We are being accused of being racist. We are not. We are just we are trying to save our country. We just want to go back to what our founders envisioned: a people free to rule themselves under law. Please, I don't know how much longer I have. Please vote for 287G. Thank you.
Thank you. Juana Guzman.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Juana Guzman and I live in Tarrant County. I come here today to express how disappointed I am at how all of you will be voting on this matter. We have given so much information, data, facts, and instead you choose to listen to the side that has provided little information or clarity about what is really going on with 287G in Tarrant County Jail. If you are listening to our testimonies now and still believe that 287G is meant to protect us from violent criminals, you have a very naive view of the criminal justice system. I would like to point out that just because someone is charged with a crime, doesn't that mean that that person committed it. What 287G does is violate people's ability to prove their innocence. Instead, the notion innocence until proven guilty does not seem to apply to immigrants. I also want to point out that last week, when asked what Class A and Class B misdemeanors are, the sheriff's office was unable to respond, and instead deviated the question and made you all forget that you even asked it in the first place. Let me give you a few examples of what is considered a Class A and B misdemeanors, as Theresa actually previously mentioned, in Texas, but are non-violent crimes. Because again, many seem to be under the impression that Class A and B means violent crimes only. Possession of marijuana up to 4 ounces is a misdemeanor A and B. Failure to identify, misdemeanors A and B. Driving while license is invalid, misdemeanor B. Petty theft of property and services, misdemeanor B. Criminal trespass, misdemeanor B. These aren't just examples of things that could happen, that could get someone deported. I personally know some people who have been deported over these things. Take, for example, W. I have his permission to share his story. He is a 19-year-old who was caught smoking marijuana by a police officer. He wasn't causing anyone harm, not doing any mischief or any violent act. He was picked up and taken to Tarrant County Jail. He spent about 10 days in jail and was ultimately convicted of possession, a Class B misdemeanor. He had no previous offenses, much less a history of violent crime. W spent 3 months in immigration detention and was deported over this. He was just a child. I have stood here and shared that I'm undocumented. You have heard from other people who are undocumented. We don't do this lightly. It is a risky thing sharing our status here, especially in this courtroom where some of us have already been verbally attacked. We have shown bravery when we have every reason not to. You, on the other hand, are in positions of power, but decide not to show us bravery in return by choosing to vote against 287G.
Thank you.
Rosa Ramirez on Miranda Trail. I don't know if there's anyone. Is there anyone still left back in the? Do we know if there's anyone left in the back room? If there's not, if there is, tell them we do have some seats up here. She's coming in. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Rosa Di Ramirez. I came to the United States January the 23rd in 1963. My mother brought us legally to the United States. When we crossed the border and they put welcome to the United States, I was the happiest day of my life. My mother stopped and said, "This is the United States of America. It has its own laws. You're not in Mexico any longer, so you have to obey the law." And I've been doing that for all these years. I'm 72 years old. And I support the 287G. I have never been stopped. I'm not white. I don't have blue eyes. And the police never has stopped me for my color. But if I obey the law, and I have taught my children, my boys, who are now 51 and 49 years old, since they were young, if the police stops you, you put your hands on the wheel, you be polite, and listen to what they're going to tell you. So I don't feel that this law is racist, because I'm not racist. So I want you to listen that we don't want a country that have more criminals. There is criminals here. There are people that come here legally. And the people that come here illegally, they already broke the law. They cross the border or whatever they do. But they broke the law. So they have to go back if they do anything that is wrong. If they molest a child, if they're drunk and they're driving, or they're doing drugs. I've seen it. I live in California until the year 1977. And I feel sorry for California. I don't want Texas to become another California. They don't respect the law over there. My sister used to live in the projects in California. You know what they used to do? They used to burn the police cars. The police cannot go on the projects. So we need laws in this country, and we need to support the police, and we need to support the 287G, please. That's all.
Thank you. Giovanni Martinez not getting any better. Is there anyone left now in the back room?
Yes. There's about 20 people back there.
Okay, that's what I needed to know.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Giovanni Martinez, and I've lived my entire life in Fort Worth. And I'm here to testify on behalf of those who are too scared to let their pain and fear be heard. For those who have been unfairly treated by the system that was supposed to protect them. I may be 19 years old, but I have a better understanding of the criminal justice system than many of you do today. Because I have lived through it, last year I was arrested in Tarrant County and falsely accused with a simple nonviolent misdemeanor. Had I been any other kid, I would have been able to pay a bond and be released to my mom and siblings. Instead, my life was flipped upside down. I believe that the system was meant to protect the innocent. That belief died the day that I was turned over to ICE, without giving the opportunity to prove my innocence. I spent 6 months in detention because of complexities that come with trying to fight two separate cases at the same time, criminal and immigration case. That time will never be returned to me. I suffered great psychological trauma, and I'm here to tell you that was greatly because of you. Your vote today is a slap in the face to many people who are innocent but wrongly convicted or falsely accused. Your vote today is a slap in the face to me. After you cast your vote today, your life will continue, unchanged and unaffected. You have the privilege of going home to your families. My battle is far from over. I continue to live in fear and anxiety, knowing that any time my family and I could be separated. I know your decision today to renew 27G isn't based on what is right or what makes sense. At the end of the day, you've shown us that you only care about whether or not you get reelected, and that once again, that proof is that our system has failed us. Thank you.
May I ask you a question?
Of course.
You said you were arrested. Who arrested you?
Fort Worth Police Department.
And did they then bring you to, where did they take you?
Here in Tarrant County.
So they brought you to the Tarrant County Jail?
Yes, sir.
And what was the charge?
I do not feel comfortable giving that information, but if you need it, I will give it to you. It was a possession for misdemeanor, Class B misdemeanor.
Okay. And so did you and I'm trying to understand this.
Yes.
As was said before. Did you bail out? And then
I was unable to.
Say again?
I was unable to.
So then
within 5 minutes, within an hour of being detained, I was already turned into ICE.
You were turned over to ICE at that point in time?
Yes, sir.
So then did they move you from the Tarrant County Jail?
After a week, yes.
After a week to ICE detention?
Yes, sir.
And then at that point in time, you had been charged with the misdemeanor.
And unable to fight my case, yes.
And now you're over in ICE detention.
Yes, sir.
What did ICE detention eventually do with you?
Once you're in the hands of immigration, your criminal case is pretty much forgotten.
I understand that part of it. What did ICE eventually deport you, or did they take you to a hearing and then set a court date for you later on?
Court date later on, sir.
And so what you're saying is, and this is one of the things that I think is something that needs to be looked at and corrected. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, while you were in ICE detention,
yes, sir,
you had a hearing back in the court,
mm-hmm,
which you weren't able to get to.
Exactly.
And therefore, they issued a warrant for your arrest.
Yes, sir.
And so once you got out of ICE detention, mm-hmm, then you had to start back over. With this. Mm-hmm. And so you then came back to the court system.
Yes, sir.
And at the court system point, did you go through the case and eventually, I'm not going to ask you whether you ended up being guilty or innocent, but did you eventually resolve that?
Yes, sir.
And so at this point in time, you have been given a time sometime in the future, mm-hmm, by the immigration judge, at which point in time you're supposed to come back for the immigration hearing.
Yes, sir.
When is that?
Year from now.
So it's sometime in 2020.
2021. Yes, sir.
And so at that point in time, they will resolve
my immigration case.
The immigration case. With regards to the case that you were originally arrested for, mm-hmm, that has been resolved.
Yes.
And I can't ask you that without asking you whether you ended up being guilty or innocent, so I won't ask you any further. But that's resolved, and that's no longer hanging over your head.
If just to give you curiosity, yes, my case was dismissed, and I was found not guilty.
So your case was dismissed,
Yes, sir.
and you were found not guilty.
Yes.
So now what you have left is the immigration hearing that will be sometime next year.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess to some extent the system worked. The case was resolved.
The system worked for whom?
Well, he is the immigration, and now folks, we're going to have a discussion up here at times too. And I expect you to be just as respectful when we have our conversation as we are when you get up here to talk. Arrested for Class B. Ended up at immigration. Immigration releases him. Now, granted, there's a problem, and we'll acknowledge the problem, and I think we acknowledged last week that one of the things we're trying to do is to tell people, if you're brought in and an immigration hold is placed upon you, you want to be careful not to bail out, because if you bail out, then immigration's going to take you. And unfortunately, immigration feels like once they take you, you're through with Tarrant County. And that's not the case, and it wasn't the case in this particular instance. And so as a result of that, he had a warrant issued for him. He got finished, the immigration judge listened to him, released him, and set a date sometime next year. Now, what I didn't ask him is, if he's still there, when did this whole process start? Did he leave? No. When were you first arrested?
October last year.
So 18. So when you went to the immigration judge, it was a 2-year. You're out. You're free to go. And 2 years from now, you're going to come back, and we're going to talk about your immigration case, your immigration setting. He didn't run away from the courts. I don't think he did. He obviously came back through the process and took care of what happened, and the judge in our particular court didn't get after him because he didn't appear, because he listened, he understood, he was with ICE at that point in time and couldn't appear. He was eventually released and found not guilty, or something to resolve that.
Your Honor, I would say that the system did not work in that particular case, because what it did was to criminalize an immigration violation. An immigration violation is not a criminal offense. It's a civil offense.
Thank y'all. Do you want to stay in here? We can have our dialogue, and it will be respectful, and that's the way it's going to be. Or we'll stop debate right now, and we'll go forward. He was arrested on a Class B misdemeanor by the city, not by our sheriff's department. He was brought into the jail. In the course of the booking in, I'm assuming he had a hold put on him, if the city of Fort Worth didn't put a hold on him when they brought him here. So he wasn't brought in because of immigration. He was brought in because he was arrested for what would be a Class B misdemeanor or above. That has been resolved. It has been taken care of. The immigration judge said, come back in 2 years, and at that point in time, we'll hear your case. So he's not being held for immigration right now. And he was not originally held for immigration.
It's still a sword of Damocles.
Well, I understand,
which he would not have been subject to had he not been charged was an offense that he didn't commit.
Well, we got, and I say this with the greatest respect, we got a jail full of people who have yet to be convicted, and they are innocent. Some of them bail out. Some of them stay in jail until that issue is resolved. That's not any difference whether he is Hispanic or whether he
was not
undocumented or anything else. Had he bailed out, it would have been the same resolve, because he would have been held for ICE. And one of the things that the Sheriff's Department is...
Let's continue.
Okay, Marie Howard.
While Ms. Howard is making her way up, I will say that I appreciate us having the conversation about what we're hearing from folks, but I do want to make sure that we hear from as many people here today. So if everyone up here and also in the audience, we maintain decorum so that we can hear from as many people as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. We brought up the costs of keeping these people in jail, moving them around. I'm a taxpayer. Every year when we have to pay taxes, and we always pay more, we're not one of those people that sits there waiting to get a refund. So we're part of the 50% who actually pay taxes and then pay more. Deportation price. The net cost to taxpayers for every illegal immigrant who sneaks into the United States has reached nearly $70,000. That's about 7 times the cost of deporting them, and about $70 billion according to a new report. And according to federal census data, the surge of legal and illegal immigrants across the Mexico-U.S. border has reached a new high since 2011 and matched the historic high of 1.75 million set in 1999. The latest census data from 2016 shows that immigrants continue to come into the United States, both legally and illegally, and the cost to taxpayers in enforcing and social services continues to rise, even when offset by the taxes they pay. So I'll keep that short. So when you're talking about the cost, think about that. Everybody should think about that, because we're all taxpayers here, most of us. And it seems to me that the cost of keeping them in jail and then deporting them is far less than this $70 billion. And that's going to rise considering how many people are coming across hourly, illegally, and as soon as they get here, especially if they go to California, which illegals is going to break that state. And that's going to become a national crisis, because we cannot have California go bankrupt. And that's what's going to happen there if they continue to encourage people to come into their state so that they can then give them free health care, free housing, free everything, free education, free college. The day that happens is going to be a day when this country is going to realize just how serious a problem we have. So thank you.
Arch Mayfield. Ms. Howard, please. Folks. Go right ahead, sir.
Okay, I did speak last week, but I've been given permission to read a letter from Anjay Crawford, whose husband has been sick the last couple of days and she cannot be here. Anjay Crawford immigrated here from East Germany a number of years ago. She says, and I'm going to read this as she wrote it, I am writing to you today as a first-generation immigrant from East Germany and also as a longtime resident of Tarrant County. Having grown up under a communist and oppressive police state, I understand the long-term effects of a state-sponsored surveillance system that functions on a basis of fear and oppression. It erodes public trust in local government, law enforcement, even in your neighbors and loved ones. Having to constantly look over your shoulder, wondering if you are being profiled and being seen as an enemy of the state, whatever the state defines enemy to be, instills terror, anxiety, and mistrust in residents and citizens, and is counterproductive to a peaceful and safe community. As you consider your vote for today's meeting, I ask you to reflect on the following questions. And I think this letter was addressed to you, Judge. What is more important to you, not only as a leader of the Tarrant County Commissioners Court, but also as a human being, a father, and a grandfather? Short-lived ideological and political allyship, or your humanity, compassion, and historical legacy as one of the most powerful leaders in Tarrant County? Considering your past community involvement in protecting and advocating for vulnerable families and children, the answer seems clear, unless, of course, such humanitarian community involvement was only for political gain or only applies to white families and children. I urge you to vote not to renew 287G. Sincerely, Anjay Crawford. Thank you.
Thank you.
Debbie Bryan Keller.
Good morning. Thank you for having me and allowing me to speak this morning. I have 2 children whose last name is Olguin. I was married to a Hispanic man my first marriage, so I am not a racist against Hispanics. My sister was an exchange student in Mexico. I was an exchange student in Uruguay. We went to those countries, excuse me, and did not expect anyone the whole world to change to our language. We learned the language of that country, and we entered those countries legally. I understand that a lot of countries around us and south of us have problems within their countries, but we cannot save the whole world here. We will go broke if we try to do that. When I was in Uruguay, the military had overthrown the government. They had issues there. They worked through them. I just wish that these countries would fix their countries within themselves. Like, there are civil wars, unfortunately. And nobody wants that, but sometimes the people have to take a stand and say what's right within their countries and try to fix their own countries instead of just fleeing here and wanting us to take care of everyone. It's just not feasible for us to pay for all these people's health care and food and everything. So, if it were okay, if it was possible, that might be, if we just had money growing on trees, but we don't. So I would just like to say I'm in full support of our sheriff. I voted for him before. I'll vote for him again. I hope you will support 287G. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth Molandano.
Hi. Hi. This is too low. Okay. My name is Lizzie Maldonado. I'm a Fort Worth resident, and I wasn't going to speak today. I just wanted to mention one thing. I just want to address the claim that the law is blind and impartial, when obviously the law is written by men, by humans, and it is as flawed as human beings are. At one point in the not so recent history, or in pretty recent history, not so distant history, it was legal to discriminate employment, housing, services, etc. because of the color of someone's skin. Today we have the new Jim Crow, and the law is not blind to race or ethnicity or class, and we can't pretend it is. That's why people of color and poor people make up a disproportionate number of people incarcerated in the most jailingest country on earth. Crossing a border without documentation is a civil offense, not a criminal offense. Of everyone who has claimed that people here without documentation have already broken the law, I would like to find one who has never committed a civil violation. We aren't calling everyone who has broken a traffic law a criminal, obviously. That's just one example of how the law is applied unequally because of our biases and our prejudices. A civil offense makes someone a criminal only if it challenges our sense of nationalism, our patriotism, and our pride. This is a political program. The law is political, and its enforcement is also political. To claim the law is blind is to believe it just manifests out of thin air and is not made and enforced by men with all of their flaws. I would also like to know that I don't think it's exactly a fair proceeding to invite the sheriff to comment on each person's commentary. He is motivated to keep this agreement because he is elected into a political position. He ran on an immigration-motivated agenda, as multiple people have already said, and the operating budget of his department is affected by this program. He is not an unbiased source who can give factual commentary in between every person who speaks. We have a chance now to limit the power of this crooked program and end this voluntary agreement today, and I would like to urge you to vote no on renewing the 287G agreement.
Thank you. Josie Contreras.
My name is Josie Contreras. I'm a precinct chair, and I thank you for allowing me to come and speak. I am strongly in favor of our Sheriff Wilburn. I believe very strongly in 287G. I am tired of seeing all these illegals come, bringing drugs and all their crimes. I have 2 daughters. I have 6 grandchildren and 5 great-grandchildren. I want them safe. I don't want them harmed in any way. And it really bothers me to see the things they do. And if they say it costs too much for ICE to have them and all this costs for retaining these criminals, what are we supposed to do? Let them loose so our cities won't be safe? Our children won't be safe? It costs more for the benefits they get. They ask for free housing, they have free medical care, free education. I, a mother alone, paid for my education, 4-year degree. Nobody helped me. I did not ask for help. So why do they come here asking for benefits like that they do not deserve? If they fear being here and afraid of the law, it's because they're criminals. They know it. The minute they cross into our country, they broke the law. They became a criminal. That's why they're called illegals. If they catch them, deport them. That's where they belong, back in their country. They do not deserve to get American benefits. I did workman's comp. I treated them like anybody else. But they told me a lot of the illegal things they were doing. This is not right, and it's not fair. And when they were working on the side and obtaining workman's comps because they didn't want to admit they were well, I reported them so they get off workman's comp. They break the law anytime they can get a chance to do so. I believe that we should close our borders and go ahead and favor strongly this 287G. Thank you.
Cindy Fountain.
Good morning, Commissioners and Judge. I'm Cindy Fountain. I'm the Social Justice Chair at my church, Westside Unitarian Universalist Church in Precinct 4. I just want to reiterate from last week that all of the systems in place that take care of crimes and deportations are in place without 287G in Tarrant County and all law enforcement agencies in the United States. So 287G is just an added layer that has created mistrust and fear, including the funding that was talked about on reimbursement. We have all of that without 287G. Okay. Now, so last Tuesday I arrived here, looked for my friend Juana, and found her with tears streaming down her face. I bent down to her, asking what happened. Juana is bold, brave. She's been up here today and spends countless hours working at justice for immigrants. As you know from last week, Juana was verbally assaulted by a white person of this community, who by her whiteness can express her privilege by attacking someone she has perceived as less than. She has perceived Juana is less because Juana is not white. Last week, a photo was posted from this meeting that showed Jessica Ramirez, another brave, bold, brown woman, testifying to her story of possibly never seeing her father again. In the photo, the people around her could be seen listening intently. In that photo, Sheriff Wayborn had his head in his phone, and his deputy behind him was looking down, possibly at his phone. The disrespect was palpable, especially juxtaposed with the other people wholly absorbed in listening to Jessica. Go back to Mexico. Get out of my country. You should be ashamed. You people are trying to take our country, which was said to Juana last week. You don't rate on my attention meter. Messages that I don't receive. Most people in this room have no idea if I'm undocumented or a foreigner. You've assumed I'm not undocumented because I'm white. I've assumed that every white person in this room is not undocumented. I am complicit. This is the message that is reverberating this country. This is the message that 287G sends out to a community of non-white people. Messages of profound disrespect, messages of hate that create fear. We learned this last week from Judge Whitley's slide, what I said already. We already have the system in place. You showed slides from 2014 that this system is already in place without 287G. You can change this. You can say that Tarrant County won't be complicit in adding another layer of hate. Please do the right thing. Do not renew 287G.
Thank you. Sarah Levenvold or Legenvold? Thank you. I need all the help I can get.
Okay, butchered all the line.
You ought to be here on the first Tuesday.
Sarah Legbold. I'm really perplexed when I was informed of this meeting today. I hadn't heard about it until last night. And what perplexes me is that the rule of law and enforcing our government's laws, our federal laws, is even up for debate, much less a vote. That my city would consider going against federal laws just because? Because of what? I haven't heard here a single reference made to the victims of these illegal aliens and the cost to those victims. The cost in health care, the cost in property damages, the cost in lives, all of those certainly override any costs Sheriff Wayborn has in his department to detain these people extra days. The fact that I've seen Hispanics get up here and not speak in defense of this law, that it somehow impacts their community, what they're telling me is that their community is rife with criminals and a criminal element that they're trying to protect here. It's outrageous that somebody would sit there and not want the criminals taken out of their own communities, as those are the ones that are impacting their communities. The FBI statistics, 30% of our federal prisoners in federal prisons, 30%, and that's not a chump change there, are illegal immigrants. 90% of illegals who are given an ICE hearing to come back for their deportation hearing do not show up for that hearing, including that young man in a year will likely ignore showing up at his hearing. Is that grounds for deportation instant? I would say yes, it is. Because you break one law, the other laws are just as easy to break. And we are a rule of law country. We're breaking down, and there is no reason for that. It's beyond imagination. You guys were elected by American citizen voters because illegals have no standing in our country. They're not supposed to vote. They shouldn't have the vote. And you guys represent the tax-paying American citizen who put you up there. And we want 287G enforced, and we support Sheriff Wayborn. Thank you.
Lon Burnham.
Members of the court, my name is Lon Burnham. I live at 2103 6th Avenue, 76110 here in Central City, Fort Worth. And as probably most of you know, I served a legislative district that was majority Hispanic for 18 years. So I have chosen to live in a community that is heavily Hispanic, and I have served that community for 18 years. And I'm really glad to be following the previous speaker because I want to say I don't suspect that that young man is going to go. He has shown more bravery here today than anybody else in the room, and I respect him tremendously. So much to say in so little time. Last week I tried to make 2 points. I think this policy is racist. There's no doubt in my mind that the way it was adopted in this county, the reason it was adopted, the way it's implemented is racist. But more importantly to me and my wife, who is now white-headed and a senior citizen, we feel less safe in our community because of things like this and what we have heard today. Because the people in our community, like my wife, are afraid of law enforcement. Hers is an extenuating circumstances. She has some health issues and she never knows when she's going to be a little bit not adjusted. So she's afraid of the police. And so are many Hispanics. I want to point out 2 statistics that I think are really important. One has not been gathered yet, but I hope somebody in this room gathers all the speakers' comments from the last 2 weeks and plots them on a county map. And I would be willing to bet that the people like me that are opposed to this policy disproportionately live in heavily Hispanic communities in Central City, Fort Worth. And the people like the woman that just spoke before me disproportionately choose to live in overwhelmingly white suburban communities. I'm just betting that's based on following politics in this community for 72 years, but it would be a real interesting statistic. Another statistic I want to make you aware of. Because I've been involved in campaigns and run for office for so many years, I spent a lot of times on porches. I started to allude to that last week when I ran out of time. When the redistricting occurred in 2001, there were 7 precincts added to the legislative district that I represented. I decided, you know what, I need to go meet those folks. I've already been incumbent for a number of terms, but it's time to go meet my new constituents. Fully a third of the households that I went to door, and Commissioner, you know I don't waste my time. I went to households that might be voters. Fully a third of those people had an adult residing in the household that was not eligible to vote because of their citizenship status. That means fully a third of those households that I visited in those 7 precincts here in Central City, Fort Worth, have reason to be afraid of the racist implementation that we see on a daily basis in this community by law enforcement. Now, it doesn't take something as graphic and dramatic as seeing a front page picture of the Star Telegram with a 20-year-old being treated like he's a fish in the barrel and shot to death by 3 white cops. That's just more dramatic. But on a day-to-day basis, from the campaign for sheriff to the implementation of this policy, it is racist and it makes me and my wife less safe. Thank you. And I call the facts to your attention. The first speaker today, the op-ed piece in this morning's paper, you're not getting the real facts. It's time to do. Could we postpone this for about 6 months and find out what the true figures are? Thank you.
Shelby Herrera.
Hi, my name is Shelby Herrera, and I just moved here about 6 months ago. Commissioners and Judge, why is it necessary for us to do this? Why is it necessary for us to not only relive our traumas and to share them to you? Why can't you simply listen to the people who you're meant to represent? But it seems like none of that matters to you, because it isn't people that look like you that are affected by this. It is disappointing in ways that elected officials should never once be. But here we are, with your vote about to happen, with no intention to consider all the data and research that you cannot deny. I just moved here 5 to 6 months ago. I'm from the Rio Grande Valley, a border area. I grew up 5 minutes from the river. And no, it isn't full of crime. It isn't full of whatever you think we people do. The terrorization comes from Border Patrol and it comes from cops. But down there, our local commissioners, They have our backs, unlike you. It is a shame that with the beautiful community that you represent, you still choose, let me repeat that, you still choose to betray our trust. You choose to push your personal agendas that are fueled by xenophobic and racist thoughts. You're probably thinking, who does she think she is? This isn't about racism. This is about protecting the community. But I'm here to tell you that criminalizing my skin color is not protecting me. If you want to protect us, listen to us. Officers who lay down their lives for us are also officers who lay down their lives for us. Are we also not going to acknowledge that the immigrants that lay down their lives because of negligence like this one? And also, just because something is a law, it doesn't make it moral. So stop blindly believing this agreement is for our protection. It isn't. Terrorizing people of color is immoral. You're not renewing 287G for us. You're doing this for yourself because you refuse to unlearn the racist ideals that society teaches you. So vote. But remember, we vote too. And as political field organizers, we will remember that come your elections. Let me repeat that. We will remember.
Jimmy Walker, excuse me, he did not want to speak, and I don't want to encourage him. Carol Coy, Cog? Coy. Thank you, Carol. Come on down.
Yes, sir. Thank you for hearing me. I have been in support of 287G, and I will remain so, mostly because, as everyone else has said, the people make a choice to come here either legally or illegally. When they come illegally, they are automatically a criminal, whether they murder someone or have drugs, whatever the deal. We have drugs and crime here, but with the addition of all these illegals who think they are here to change our country into the country they are fleeing, my thought is, why don't they go back and fix their country? Our country, up until now, has remained free, and they were to come here to have a better life. But now they come here to change our country into an unlawful Venezuela where the socialist governments are killing the people without any remorse for any reason they want. We don't do that in America. We legally have Sheriff Wayburn and all the policemen arrest them if they have done something illegal and detain them for that purpose. I am thoroughly grateful for all the people who do that to take care of us. It doesn't matter what color you are or what race you are. I have friends of every color, every religion, every race, every creed, and I respect each person individually for their responsibility to take care of themselves and their family, not to lean on us to take care of them and all their children that they come here to have so they can stay in America and suck us dry. So thank you very much for your attention to all of our comments, and please support the 287G for as long as we can have it. They're helping to keep us safe, keep our country patriotic to the American way of life, and like our forefathers, we must suffer some of the consequences to keep this country free. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Christopher Nahara.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I know that you've all heard this before, but can Mr. Fix join us?
Well, no, he's off the podium right now, so you've got 3 minutes.
I used to be a teacher not too long ago. I would have students come up to me telling me that they didn't like the color of their skin, that they didn't want to be Mexican or whatever they were, that they didn't want to speak Spanish. I know that some of you can't relate and will never understand what internalized racism feels like, but I hope that you're able to empathize. I know some people here feel as though this isn't about racism, but it is. How could I tell my kids to trust the police when I don't trust the police? As a teacher, I was supposed to be a beacon of hope and a resource, but I couldn't do that. I couldn't tell them that that systemic racism and biases weren't a thing. Sometimes I was the only adult male presence in their lives. And for my kids of color, sometimes I was the only male presence, negative or positive. And you can only guess why that may be. I had kids disappear sometimes. You can also guess why that may be. This agreement tells these kids that this racist discourse and rhetoric is valid and that we don't care about them. And that you guys aren't looking out for them. You can't tell me that this isn't based on race. I don't know why this is so hard for you. Les quiero pedir perdón a los niños. Pase lo que pase, vamos a seguir peleando. All right? Thanks.
Thank you. Terry Stanley.
Good morning, Commissioners and County Judge. My name is Terry Stanley, but I go by TJ Stanley. The first time I attended this place was about 3 weeks ago, on June 4th. I had never been to the county court before that time. I didn't know anything about this thing until that time. I was people talk about against it, but I didn't know anything, so we looked it up and found out. Sorry, I'm kind of nervous right now. I don't like public speaking. I don't know what it's like to be a person of color. I'm not. And I'm not ashamed to say that I was born white. I am. I'm a white male. My parents are both white, sorry. But I do know what it's like to be disabled. When I was a kid, I was diagnosed with autism. I'm a member of the Tarrant County Republican Party and precinct chair. And I don't agree with everything the Republican Party stands for. I'm not for abortion, but I'm not against it either. I'm neutral on a lot of issues. I am also, I'll be honest with you, statistics always get to me because I'm not good at math. I like history. Sorry.
It's all right.
Our founding fathers created a nation to be free, but also created a nation of laws. John Adams said these words, and he said, "We are a new nation ready to take place in the world. Not an empire, but a republic. Republic of laws and not men." Because men are easily swayed by emotions. We saw a lot of people out here talking. But emotions if we make laws of emotions, we can make laws of whims. Now, not all laws are perfect. Many of them are flawed. But that's why we have laws, so we have Congresses to make them. But people want to make Congress irrelevant because they just want to do it. We have a Congress who doesn't do its job. We have immigration laws that are old, but we do have immigration laws. When we actually studied the 287G, I was shocked to find out it was actually from 1998, 1996, under Bill Clinton. And it has been done on both Bush, Obama, as well as Trump. Obama even authorized this to continue on. He's supposed to have been the guy he was supposed to be against. He was supposed to be the guy who was supposed to be about open borders and foreign immigration. We have California that's broke, and now they're talking about adding more money for health care for illegal aliens. What? Are you serious? You're going to literally bankrupt your country just so you can have that? For a lot of people who are foreign immigrants, it's not about the fact that they're here foreign immigrants. A lot of it's about power. That's what they want. They want to control everyone else. That's why whenever we hear about gun shooting, all of them are immediately talking about how we need gun control. Guess what? The only people that obey gun control laws are law-abiding citizens. Criminals, they don't even care about laws. They will always find ways against them. Sorry. Martin Luther King Jr. had a statement saying, "Don't judge me by the color of my skin, but by the content of my character." Well, a lot of people want to be judged by the color of their skin, not the content of the character. How can we have a nation that respects the rule of law, but then want to ignore the law when it comes to what we believe when we don't? So I'm here to say, please support this program. We need it. Thank you.
Good. Please, Elva Mosier. Ma'am. Go ahead, please.
Sheriff Wayman, I'm very sorry.
Can you talk to the microphone, please?
I was just expressing my condolences to Sheriff Wayman on the loss of Deputy
Shepard.
Thank you. I'm really sorry. Me llamo Elva Moser. Buenos días. Vivo en Benbrook. Mi representante en esta comisión es el señor Brooks. ¿Qué es el 227G? 227G, 287G, es un acuerdo voluntario firmado entre la entidad policial y ICE. El acuerdo delega la autoridad para hacer cumplir la ley de inmigración dentro de las jurisdicciones locales y permite que la policía local se capacite para hacer cumplir las leyes federales de inmigración. Esto significa que después de que ICE delega oficiales a la policía local, esos oficiales pueden identificar y procesar inmigrantes detenidos e indocumentados para su deportación y emitir detenciones de inmigración desde la cárcel. En resumen, los oficiales delegados pueden actuar como agentes de ICE dentro de la cárcel del condado de Tarrant County. Gracias por tu atención y que Dios los bendiga.
Gracias. Chuck Mowert Jr. Where's Chuck? Chuck, come on down.
Good morning. I'm Chuck Mogid, and I'm a former city council member of Colleyville, as well as the president of the Crime Prevention and Control District. And what I'd like to offer my advice is that you vote, please, in favor of retaining 287G. The simple reason is that our community has been in the top 10 safest cities in Texas for the last dozen years, and we've been the #1 safest city for about half of those years, as have the surrounding cities in our area. And one of the key reasons is the cooperation and collaboration between the law enforcement agencies in the area. So what happens is that with that cooperation, with that collaboration, we are able to defend public safety and make sure that citizens are protected and that crime is kept to a minimum. 287G is simply a way in which that happens between the federal government and Tarrant County, much as Tarrant County with the Colleyville Police Department and South Lake Police Department and Hearst and North Richland Hills, et cetera, do it. This is a major issue for public safety, and as the proud adoptive parent of 3 black children, it's something that also affects very much the citizens in the minority communities. They benefit from law and order as well as everybody else. It's incredibly important that from a law and order standpoint, we do what's necessary to keep our citizenry safe. So please support 287G. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Kit Jones. Followed by Jessica Ramirez. Jessica, if you'll come up, then wait a minute. No. Is Kit Jones coming forward? Okay, Jessica Ramirez.
Good morning, Commissioners. Today I'm here to represent the ICE Out of Tarrant campaign, which a lot of you are familiar with. ICE Out of Tarrant is a coalition of volunteer organizers who come from the community that every single one of you represents. 287G is bad for our community because it's unconstitutional, unsafe, and costly, yet you're ignoring the plea to keep us safe. We have had meetings with you, we have done research for you, we have even shared tacos with you. what have you done for us? 2 years ago, you made a mistake. You signed our community away with absolutely no information. And this, today, was your opportunity to keep us safe and demand accountability from an office that still has not provided any information to you. You ignore our pain, you ignore the facts, you ignore our voices, and you give us your back. So now I will do the same to you, because you have made us understand that at the end of the day, all we have is each other. Mi gente, we are somebody, and we deserve full equality, and that means feeling safe in our communities. I deserve that, you deserve that, everybody deserves that. We have been here to give our testimonies for the past 2 months. We have proven our case against 287G. We have proved this through data, stories, research, you name it. We have done the work. Yet the Commissioner's Court has chosen to vote against us today, disregarding the intended and unintended consequences of this program. We have not lost everything today because this is not over. We will not forget their cowardice and partisanship. They forget that we're fighting for our families, our mothers, our fathers, our community. And there is nothing stronger than the love for them. And to the people of the campaign that have been putting in work every single day for about a year. We didn't come out of the woodwork like some of these racist people that just heard about 287G last week. We have been doing this for a year because we believe in this work. So to every single one of you of the campaign, I love you, and no matter how this goes, just know that this continues, and thank you for everything you do for our community.
Has Kent Jones come forward? Gabriela Rodriguez.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So today we heard a lot of things, and I have managed to keep my composure through a lot of it, but the last few comments have been taking me out, and it's really out of character for me to be up here as emotional as I am. But I would like to call out Josie Contreras, who said that immigrants come here, undocumented immigrants come here, and they take stuff for free. I'm an American citizen, and I have not been able to receive anything from this government. When my father passed away, he was undocumented, but he was the sole provider. My mom had to make something happen for us. And for her to say that we take stuff for free, that undocumented people take stuff for free, is ignorant beyond belief. And I am not going to let her say that, because I am an American citizen and I had no right to have anything. We didn't have food for days. It was ridiculous for her to come up here and say that. And it's not okay for her to say that. It's not. Because I am living proof that that is not what happens. If an American citizen cannot have rights and cannot have money to help themselves move forward, how on earth can an undocumented person take from this country? They provide so much and get nothing in return. They live their lives in fear. And y'all should be ashamed for condoning that racist rhetoric. I do not yell, I am not emotional, but that is absolutely absurd and ridiculous. But now that I got that out the way, I would like to address the fact that this agreement was not vetted properly before coming to Tarrant County. In 2017, it was introduced, and in 2017 was when the White House was filled with racist rhetoric, with unnecessary, very fear-enticing rhetoric. And Tarrant County is not immune to that. We would like to think that we're infallible when it comes to stuff like that, but the fact is, it was not a partisan decision when it was voted in, and it should not be a partisan decision when it's voted out. Human decency shouldn't be partisan. That's not how it works around here. You should do what is best for Tarrant County. And for my father, may God rest his soul, because he is dead. He was an honest man, and he did everything he could for us. And as an American citizen, I'm sitting here telling you this is not what this country needs. This is not what this county needs. And y'all should be ashamed of yourselves if y'all support that racist, unnecessary rhetoric. Thank you for your time. You're so kind.
Doyle Fine.
Good afternoon, Judge Wedley and Commissioners. I'm Doyle Fine. I live in the historic and diverse Fairmont neighborhood in Fort Worth, Precinct 4. J.D. Johnson is my county commissioner. Okay, anybody who's paying attention knows the last 2 years, our predominantly Hispanic communities have been under attack by the federal government, the state government, and now our county government. At the federal level, they've had to face aggressive ICE raids, family separations, internment camps, and kids in cages. At the state level, SB 4, Texas version of Show Me Your Paper Law, and here in Tarrant County, of course, 287G. I just want to thank Judge Whitley for last week acknowledging the fact that native-born Americans commit crimes at a much higher rate than the immigrant community. I thank you for that, sir. Like I said, the immigrant community actually, due to their immigration status, tends to work hard, keep their heads down, try to stay out of trouble the best they can. They pay local sales taxes and subsidize our property taxes in Tarrant County with their high rents they pay, like most of the rest of us who have to pay rent. I want to know what happened to my Reagan Republican friends. We used to have philosophical differences, usually on issues like the size of the role of government or the need for regulations or what constituted fair labor practices. Honest disagreements. But what I respected about my Reagan Republican friends is they had certain core principle convictions that they truly believed in. First, smaller government. Second, restraint of federal overreach. And third, local control, not federal control over the locality. Okay, well, these beliefs and values they held also, or where they espoused a commitment to basic American values like freedom and liberty. And by all counts, the 287G doesn't pass the smell test to my Republican friends, what they hold dear. Okay, now I just challenge you to Sheriff Wayboard's assertion that 287G makes us safer, because everyone who spoke to that when crimes aren't reported, it's more dangerous for the rest of us, and that's just a fact. Anyhow, to close, I served in the 7th Fleet. My commander-in-chief was Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan had advocated for an immigration policy that was sensible, humane, and a pathway to citizenship, because he understood that how we are perceived around this world has huge implications on our national security. And he did not speak for walls. He went to Berlin and told Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Well, my request to the county commissioners today is, please tear down this wall of division and distrust in our county. Do not become errand boys for the Trump agenda, political agenda. We're better than that. And I have one question for my dear Republican friends.
Mr. Fine, let's ask the question.
What the hell happened?
Thank you, sir. Leslie Polk.
Good afternoon to Judge Whitley, to our Commissioners Court, Sheriff Wayborn, your departments, and my condolences. As human beings, we create boundaries, which eventually unfolds the meaning of life, extending our understanding, unveiling our preconceived notions of what our opinions really believe. These are the words, texts, concepts, and actions of what we can't seem to make sense of. So layer by layer, we open ourselves up to uncover our biases, our prejudices that actually point to limitations that serve a purpose worth admiring. If we would just take the time to know one another, then walls could be broken, boundaries seeded, divisions crossed, leading to no more barriers between the two, until there are no more barriers between the two, limiting us, prohibiting us, because barriers essentially restricts and can even forbid interaction and coexistence. So we must make every effort to connect, because it could lead to revolution on both ends. Genuine attachments could be formed, linking together that way in which we exist, all for the purpose of mending, converting, revising, evolving that which was once lost and broken, allowing for transformation of one's total being, completing each other in spirit and body, veneration of one accord in order that we might truly possess and thus experience the beauty of power on one accord, in order that we might all be on one accord in spirit and body. As we do such things in remembrance of Christ's body, much more than the breaking of bread and sipping of wine, to remember Christ's body, who was bruised, scorned, and teased, to remind us that we are one body, bruised, scorned, and teased. To remember what it's like to be in the position of our immigrant brothers and sisters' bodies, who are now suffering at the hands of other folks' bodies. Other folks, we need your bodies to hear the cries of the ancestors of this land's bodies, pleading with us to make a change for the sake of our children and their children's children's bodies. Sacred boundaries unfold the meaning of life, layer by layer, until there are no more boundaries, limiting us, prohibiting the way in which we exist, which then allows for transformation of one's total being, completing each other in spirit and body. We are to be one body. Thank you.
Thank you.
Natalie Contreras.
Good afternoon, Judge and Commissioners. My name is Natalie Contreras. I reside at 949 Scenic Drive, Fort Worth, Texas 76111. I am the Senior Legal Assistant at Raíces, again, nonprofit. We provide low-cost legal services to immigrants and refugees. Last week, I shared the concerns, the fears of my clients and my own personal fears regarding 287G and the consequences that it brings to our community. As a matter of fact, for the past 2 months, actually, and for over a year, the community has been organizing. We have been working to inform all of you of what this program does to our community and the fear that it evokes. But it's evident that that's not enough. What I wrote, it's obvious that more than anything, I just feel disappointment for what happened here, or what will happen. But that's fine, because more than anything, I want to take the time to thank my community for coming together to uplift our stories, to unite us, and regardless of how this vote goes, we're not going anywhere. We're going to continue to organize. We're going to continue to educate and empower. Thank you for your time. Again, like I said, we're not going to go anywhere. And I want to say in my own capacity, I'm excited to see the change that is happening in Tarrant County. This country is a melting pot of ideas and cultures. And honestly, I can't wait until your children and your grandchildren partake in that melting pot, because it's coming. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Maria Robles.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me here. My deepest condolences to the Sheriff's Office and their families. We're in our prayers. My name is Maria, and I'm an organizer with Faith in Texas, and today I will be speaking on my capacity as an organizer. Faith in Texas is a multi-faith, multiracial movement in Tarrant, Dallas, Collin, and Denton counties. We organize in over 35 congregations around social justice. We are people led by our faith beliefs, building towards a world where everyone belongs. And in 2018, we made over 14,000 calls and conversations with active voters and had an 81 voting turnout. I'm here today as a taxpayer. Yes, you heard right. Unlike other comments earlier today, I am a taxpayer. I also was an undocumented immigrant. And so the comments about people being illegal is an action. I am a person, and I am a person made in the image of God. The action that people have taken many times coming to this country illegally is that, an action. So I want to lift up the fact that I contribute to the amount of $35 billion in federal, state, and local taxes as an undocumented immigrant. And now, if anybody would guess, I don't think you would guess my status, but I'll leave it up to you. We contribute $35 billion according to MELC, the Mexican American Legislative Caucus. And the benefits. I want to address the fact that they were stating that we receive benefits. In Texas, you have to wait 5 years before you can apply. And there's plenty of mechanisms to prohibit people that are unlawfully here to get benefits. Access to health care. I'd like to find that myself. Right now, I pay over $1,200 in medical insurance, and access to JPS is non-existent for undocumented taxpayers. And I say taxpayers because when I go pay my taxes every year of over $1,500, they don't ask for my green card. When I go pay my property taxes, they don't ask for my green card. They take my check and it cashes. So I am a taxpayer and I haven't taken anything from this country. I lost my 13-year-old brother to a U.S. citizen to gun violence. Does that mean that every citizen is a criminal? Does that mean that I consider you citizens criminals? No, I consider that to be a bad person. With that being said, I will continue. I want to make it very clear that regardless of what other people think that are...
I'm sorry, you're at the 3
I'm just asking you to please consider all of our votes and remember who you serve. When the law of man goes against the law of God, who will you then answer to with your votes? Please vote against 287G.
Diane Wood.
My name is Diana Wood. I live at 813 Crawford Street in Fort Worth. I come as a representative of several advocacy groups against 287G. They're immigrant advocacy groups. I also come as representing these 37 organizations that you have copies of a letter to you from these organizations, community organizations, most of them, almost all of them. So I come representing them. Before I launch into my brief statement, I want to respond to the young man who came up here and talked about his deportation status and the fact that it seems to me that doesn't seem to be a consideration. That seems to be that the system is working. I'm here to tell you that is a horrible, horrible travesty. That does not work, and his life will never be the same. You have heard people up here talking to you about their status and what's happened to them. Their lives will never be the same. When someone is arrested, they may lose their job. They may not ever be able to apply for another job. You know, their children will suffer. They may lose their house. I have not heard Sheriff Wayborn talk about any of that. What I have heard is that ICE exists to all these criminals. We do not want criminals. We do not want that. But these repeated criminals, they don't need ICE for that. Why have ICE for that? They already know their immigration status. So are we spending all that money just for these 400 and so repeated offenders? He did not mention any of these people who suffer. So this program is unconstitutional. This program is racist. This program has lack of transparency. This program is in violation of civil rights. Leads to racial profiling. Given that, I'm reminded of issues in the past that relate, in my opinion, to the balance of power between government agencies and communities. And ideally, that balance exists so that there's an optimal way in the community that people can live to their fullest capacity, that there's a respect for all cultures, there's a respect for people, and people can walk around and live happily. We don't want criminals running around shooting at us and murdering us. We don't want that. But we want to foster the kind of community where people can actually live happily. And Fort Worth does not measure up to that standard, does not. I heard Jessica Ramirez a speech. I agree with everything she said. I truly hope she's wrong on one issue. I do hope that you are not going to vote for this horrible, awful program. Do not vote for it, please. I don't get involved in things just because I don't have anything to do. I mean, I do lots and lots of activity. I've been studying this issue now for 2 years. I know the facts. We in this community have brought you the facts over and over and over again, not the people who suddenly show up with whatever their intentions are.
Thank you.
Please respect us. Please respect us.
Thank you. Luis Castillo.
Good afternoon, esteemed commissioners. My name is Luis Castillo, President Barrington LULAC. I'm sitting at the audience, and a thought came to my mind and says, why do we always, as the people, as the community, as the state, county, why do we always find ourselves in a position where one group of people are trying to oppress people of color? Why is it? Is it the history of our nation? We can go back to the manifest destiny. I mean, that's a punchline, but there's always an evil motive behind it to oppress people of color. Or let's go back to the Civil War, states' rights. For what? To enslave blacks. It's always a punchline. And now this here is the 287G to deport murderers, drug dealers, and rapists. A punchline. But the evil motive behind it is to oppress people of color. That's it. Always the same group of people. I don't need to mention the color, but always the same people. It's a history. It's a history. And the question is this county government going to follow that pattern of behavior? Or are we going to do what's human? The immigration issue is a humanitarian issue that needs to be fixed. And we're human beings. But we need to start being human about it. And we need to fix it, because programs like 287G only makes it easier for the government, the federal government, not to fix the broken system. You know, and as long as local governments do that, it's not going to be fixed. So the question is, will Tarrant County be part of the solution or be part of the problem? Now, going back to, I mean, I heard a lot of badgering of illegal aliens. Let's not be very hard on illegal aliens. You know, after all, illegal aliens brought us to this state. I mean, if you look back at 183 years ago, at San Jacinto, most of the men under Sam Houston were illegal aliens from the United States. So they made a great contribution. So let's not forget that. You know, legal aliens have made a lot of contributions to our state, our country. And let's not forget that history lesson, that we all in some form or fashion come from illegal aliens. So I ask you to please vote against the renewal, and we thank you for your service. Thank you.
Thank you. Bruce Ortez.
Hello, Judge.
Good morning.
Commissioner.
Or afternoon.
Good afternoon. Okay, so I'll start off with saying that I'm against 287G, and I don't have a lot of fancy data to speak from, but I do have a lot of experience that I can speak on behalf of. After working in two different DA offices, two here in Texas, one in St. Louis. I can tell you that when you're a prosecutor, the things that matter is you got to represent what's best for the state, the law, the defendant, and most importantly, the community. A lot of people spoke here today. I feel like the community's been really ignored. And the reason I say that is just because, just because something's law doesn't mean it's morally right. For the religious people here, the law got Jesus killed. And for the people that are talking about how much money we're spending on taxes, we fight a lot of wars for the rich man, and I promise you, we'll save trillions if we stop any of that. So for the people that are here saying that 287G is going to make me feel safe, now feeling safe and actually being safe are two different things. Because feeling safe, yeah, I agree with you. It probably will make you safe, but actually being safe, that's the difference. Because by doing this, the country already has a lack of trust with police officers. Doing this is just going to create more lack of trust. Coming from St. Louis and living there for 3 years, that's a city that already has had that problem and continues to have that today. Doing something like this will create a division between the community, especially in a place like Fort Worth and Tarrant County, where it's dominant immigrant. You break that trust, it's going to take a very long time to gain back. And even after 287G is gone, it's still going to take a very long time to gain back. So, something like this will create fear, discrimination, and the division. It's not only going to impact people of color, it's going to impact everybody. You can't just target one section of the community and expect it not to impact the whole. Because whether you're documented or not, crime has already been here. There's plenty of crime to go around. So you don't need immigrants to help you out with that. Because the only thing this is going to do is it's going to create unreported crime to go by. It's going to back up the docket. It's going to have faulty arrests, wrongful convictions. And the only people that profit from this is the actual criminals that are already here. Because they run the streets. They know who won't talk. And they'll take advantage of people not reporting the crime. So that's only going to increase the crime for everybody, not just one set of people. So by instating this, it's definitely going to impact everybody, and it can have a long-lasting effect that maybe we won't feel today, but we'll definitely see it in the future if we create that division between the criminal system and the police and among the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg Hughes.
Afternoon, Judge Whitley and commissioners. I grew up in a rather profound state of ignorance that I still have some shreds and pieces of today. And that's the ignorance of knowing what it's like not to be a native-born Northern European male. I can't know the real experiences of people unlike myself. Does that mean I can't work with them? No. Does that mean I can't empathize with issues? No. Does that mean I can't fight for them? No. I can fight for their rights. I can fight against the abuses that they suffer. But the first thing I have to do before I can do that is I have to actually believe them. I have to listen to a black man who tells me about having unfair interactions with the police, and I've got to actually believe that if I'm going to take any action on his behalf. If a woman tells me about her unfair treatment at work, how she's marginalized in meetings, how she's talked over, I can observe it, but I don't understand it because it doesn't happen to me. But I can go to bat for her. I can believe her when she tells me what those impacts are. And I can maybe help change a situation. And I tell you that because we've all been listening to people who may be like us, maybe not like us. But do we believe them? Do we believe the Hispanic community that tells us that laws such as 287G affect their ability to even approach the police, to trust the police. I mean, they're telling us that with pretty much one voice. I mean, I choose to believe them. I don't find any reason to think that this is concocted. You know, it's a conspiracy. They all decided they're going to get together for some reason, and they're going to come up here and they're going to oppose 287G's continuance. I believe them. And I think when you cast your vote, what you're telling them is whether you believe them or not. Thank you.
Cindy Matea.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Cindy Mata, and I reside in zip code 76115, Precinct 4. I'm here because 287G affects everybody in our community. I'm here because 287G does not help our community feel safe. It instead increases fear among people who are victims of a crime to report crimes. It damages the trust we have with local law enforcement, because when local law enforcement is meant to protect and serve us, but fails to do that by focusing on an agreement that targets our already vulnerable community, we cannot feel safe and we cannot trust. To create trust means that you will listen to everyone who has been directly impacted when we tell you that we do not feel safe and that 287G does not achieve that. To achieve trust between local law enforcement and our community does not mean educating members of our community on how the program works when we are directly impacted. It instead means that you will listen to the ways that our jail system has continuously and unjustly failed us. It means that you will listen to us when we share that members of our community have been falsely accused and convicted. You cannot continue to say that our community does not understand the influence of local law enforcement when we are here consistently sharing with you the impact that it has had on our lives. I ask that you take a moment and look around the room, that you think of all the testimonies that have been shared with you. What do you see? I'll tell you what I see when I look around the room. When I look around the room, I see the faces of people in my community, your community, that have been and continue to be impacted by policies such as 287G. 287G is an agreement that is flawed, that does not require data to be collected or measured. It is not transparent. Sheriff Bill Wayburn has failed to provide any actual data to prove that the agreement has made Tarrant County safe. Instead, he has chosen to present a sarcastic presentation on an issue that has broken many families. There is no reason that you should continue to make a decision without any objective data, because without it, you're unable to determine the impact of the program to our public safety. On the other hand, you have heard real evidence of the fear it has caused. I urge you to make a decision in the best interest of everyone in our community. I ask that you listen. To renew this agreement means that you're deciding to ignore us, that you're choosing to move forward with a policy at the expense of a broken household, at the expense of the mental health of thousands of families, at the expense of our trust. To renew 287G agreement means they have chosen to support a program that has been known to racially profile, tells us they have chosen to not demand accountability or transparency. It means they have chosen to ignore an already vulnerable population and making it so less safe for everyone. It means that you have chosen to dismiss us. I'm here up here because, yes, it is important, as you have previously mentioned, Judge Whitley, that we show our continued presence at the court because our stories matter. I urge you to please remember all of us when you vote on the renewal of 287G.
Thank you. Norma Martinez.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Norma, and I am a member of ICE out of Tarrant. I'm here to advocate for the rights of immigrants and oppose the renewal of 287G. As a future social worker, the renewal of 287G would impact deportees, families, and communities in detrimental ways. Immigrants who are deported are obligated to return to dangerous and tumultuous environments in their countries of origin. A study conducted by the Global Migration Research Project indicated numerous cases where deportations resulted in harm, including kidnapping, torture, rape, and murder. As for the families and communities left behind, they have to deal with the psychosocial consequences of deportation. According to Buckingham et al., family members will experience food insecurity, economic hardships, and housing instability. To earn a living, primary caregivers will be forced to work longer hours, leaving little to no contact with children. Older children will often become the primary caretakers of their younger siblings. When it comes to children, when they are separated from their families, they will display emotional and behavioral changes. Such changes in their sleeping and eating patterns, sadness, anxiety, anger, withdrawal. All of these changes will impact their school performance and retention. Immigrant children living in communities where raids have taken place will feel abandoned, isolated, fearful, and depressed. Members of communities where raids have occurred feel fearful and distrustful of public institutions. It doesn't matter if 287G doesn't operate in the streets. When people hear of ICE and the police collaborating, they are afraid. They are less likely to report crime to the police, partake in social services, schools, culture activities, and health clinics. Our community should prioritize safety and inclusion for all families, regardless of their immigration status. Children, families, and communities deserve to live a life free of fear. If the Commissioner Court decides to renew 287G, they will have turned their backs towards the immigrant community. Thank you.
Thank you. Giovanni Torres, and then after that, Ruben Salinas, and then that's the last.
Hello, my name is Giovanni Torres. I live in Precinct 2, Grand Prairie, Texas. And, you know, a little bit of history for some of y'all that might not know that the Battle of the Alamo was actually fought because under the Mexican Constitution of 1830 stated that nobody, regardless of your skin color, because racism is very prominent in Mexico too, nobody that looked brown, African American, Afro Latino, could not be sold or bought, could not be enslaved by anybody. That's why the Alamo happened, because Texans refused to let slaves free. Texans refused to give rights to African Americans. And what they ultimately had to do was go, and when they did escape, they went to the Cherokee tribes, because even they treated them better than the founding fathers of Texas politics, or the Alamo. But regardless of that, we are here to discuss ICE and the agreement between the Sheriff's Office, the county commissioners, and what that power holds. June 13th, 2019, a 7-year-old died from India in custody of ICE and CBP. June 23rd, May 23rd, 2019, a 40-year-old woman, Honduran, died in custody of ICE and CBP. June 2nd, a 33-year-old man from El Salvador died in custody of ICE and CBP. June 1st, Joanna Medina from El Salvador, a trans woman, died in ICE custody. In September 29th, 2018, a 10-year-old died, but it was kept from the public for 243 days. And May 14th, 2019, a 2-year-old Guatemalan child died in ICE custody. So if you renew this 287G agreement with the help of the Sheriff's Office, you too will be a complicit to the death of these children, to the death of these men and women, to the death that occurs on our border, that occurs in ICE holding facilities, detention centers, and everything that has to do with ICE. We know ICE is a rogue agency. We've seen it. The lack of transparency and accountability goes far-fetched, or needless to say, it's toxic. And if you choose to renew the 287G agreement, you will be complicit in every of these deaths in the hands of ICE.
Thank you. Ruben Salinas.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Ruben Salinas, Denton County, neighbor and concerned citizen. I'm here to speak in favor of 287G and the continuance of the program. First, let's address what the real issue is all about here today. I mean, we hear all these testimonies about emotion, about personal situations, but it's not about that. It's about whether or not the county chooses to continue to cooperate with our federal authorities that have been in charge to enforce our immigration law. So it's simply an issue about public safety and the rule of law. 287G has always been and reveals it's just simply allowing our local enforcement to work with our federal agencies in maintaining that immigration law. Throughout these testimonies this week and last week, we've heard about cost. The cost of being in the program is nothing but a fraction. Whether it's $100,000, whether it's $200,000, it's a fraction of the cost what it would cost us to maintain people who have committed felonies or serious crimes in our country who should not be here. And therefore, in the words of our Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, he said we cannot adjudicate, incarcerate, medicate, educate the entire world or any illegal immigrants. We just can't. We're in $20 trillion of deficit, which I might add happened in the last few years, certainly didn't happen recently. But I will tell you that just last month, and we're at a crisis. 100,000 aliens have crossed our border in just the last month. We are at a crisis mode. And so our law enforcement is stressed, and they need the help and support of our community and of our commissioners to vote with them and at least allowing them to enforce law to help keep our community safe. It doesn't mean that every individual that has come here, either by their choice or through no fault of their own, that they're criminals. We're not saying that. So we hear about them in the case of anyone committing if you've not committed a crime, then you should not be in fear. Now I understand I'm a Hispanic. I'm not in fear because I'm a USA citizen. Okay, so I've been born here and I don't have fear. Do we talk about racism, xenophobia, and all of that at the rhetoric that's come? Well, those opposed to 287G, so if you are in fear, it's because you or your parents brought you here and have broken the law. And so it's about accountability, and that's what's lacking in our country today. So lastly, if these individuals want to blame someone, they need to look at themselves first. They need to look at themselves first, and then those who enable them. They're sympathizers, the Democrat Party. If you want to fix immigration plight and help to reform immigration law, then look to your Democrat leaders, Pelosi, Schumer, Rep. Green in Houston, Jackson Lee here in Texas, and they're the ones to blame that don't work with this president. So I ask you to please vote for 287G.
I want to again thank everyone. For the most part, everything was handled very well today, and I think very respectfully. Let's not end it at the end with anything but that. Closing comments. Sheriff, would you like to?
Your Honor, you offered a great deal of information today. I don't think that I can add anything to it other than just reiterating this is a program inside the jail. The demographics of the officers making those decisions are majority minority officers. We didn't choose it that way. They just are. There is not. This business of racism is absolutely far-fetched. It has nothing to do with it. Everybody's asked the same questions. Everybody is treated exactly the same way. And I'm sad that that came into this debate. But, Your Honor, I go with the Commissioner's order.
Any comments?
Yes, sir. As you might have guessed. I think that we who are charged with making public policy should in many ways be subject to the same Hippocratic oath that doctors take upon being sworn into that profession. And that Hippocratic oath says, first, do no harm. I think that 287G does harm. It attempts to fill a vacuum left by the lack of a federal comprehensive immigration policy. It layers onto that situation an unfunded mandate to local government, in which it captures local resources and local tax dollars to accomplish a function that is not ours to accomplish. When you layer onto that some processes that are of dubious constitutionality, like civil warrants, which have not been thoroughly tested in the courts, I think that we have created a monster that runs amok in our community, generating division, fear, distrust, and adds no value when it comes to public safety. We have recently, we as local government have recently been placed up under a regime by the state legislature that caps the revenues that we're able to generate from our tax dollars. Puts a hard cap of 3.5% growth on our revenues. That 3.5% hard cap on our revenues is going to cause us to have to make some serious decisions about what we must do, about what we can do, about what we can afford to do. And I would submit that under that 3.5% cap, we should only do those things that we are specifically mandated to do. The enforcement of immigration policy is not one of those things. This is not about Tarrant County being a sanctuary county. We were not a sanctuary county before 287G, and we won't be a sanctuary county if 287G goes away. I'm opposed to 287G and will not vote for this extension because we can't afford it. We can't afford it morally. We can't afford it financially. And frankly, I'm a little disappointed that we've got several bean counters in the room, not just you, Judge. We've got several bean counters in the room. And nobody has bothered to count the beans. So we've got absolutely no idea on what our real cost in this program is. I won't be supporting it. I've learned a lot from the people who have addressed us over the past couple of months. And I stand with them.
Commissioner Allen?
I want to thank everyone who over the past 8 weeks or so has regularly attended Commissioner's Court to make public comment on this issue, regardless of where you stand on the issue, as well as those who have emailed our office, who have called our office, who have approached me as I've been out in the community, have visited with our staff, have hit us up on social media, you name it, that we have received input on this matter. Now, I'm in somewhat of a unique position, and this is not a criticism to my colleagues who were here prior to January 1, but I was not part of the court that originally passed this agreement. Now, just like any other issue or matter that I came to have a better understanding of come January 1, that I've worked intently to do so. I hope that the residents of Precinct 2, and certainly those of you who don't live in Precinct 2, who live in the county or care about what happens in our county, that you have felt that and heard that I have looked to receive absolutely as much information on this issue as I could. Certainly in my meetings with the sheriff, in my follow-up correspondence, and the opportunity that we all had to ask questions of this initiative to gain a better understanding and to see if it really was the way that it's been implemented, if it really was holding up the true intent and the purpose of it. We can't ask the original crafters that implemented it however many presidential administrations ago. But I will say that in the time that I have spent working to gather information about this, that I really wanted to make sure that I understood the facts and the hard facts. And I get that this is a very emotional issue. As someone who's been separated from their parents, not because of an immigration issue, but because of our criminal justice system that thought, and it was up to a judge who made a decision, that my mother, who broke the law and was sentenced to 10 years in state prison for what amounted to $2,200 of bad debt. And when she was provided that sentence, the judge told my mother that she was getting that length of time because he wanted her to be an example of what not to do. Because here in Texas, we're tough on crime, right? I would argue that we should be smart on crime. And so while my mother did not have to serve the entirety of that time because she was a model prisoner, she was released early. She served 3.5 years, but because of that, we experienced homelessness. For the very people who were supposed to care for us, we were abused by. I was homeless at 16 years old and couch hopped, and I stole food, I stole clothes, I stole toiletries to care for myself in addition to having a job, in addition to going to school. So that's a really human story, and that there are very real-world implications to the decisions that we make here and every other policy-making body across this nation. So I don't take those personal human experiences to light, and it has taken years for me to work through the pain and the bitterness associated with that. But I'm telling you this because I want you to know that that is the lens through which I look at on some issues. In this issue, I focused on the facts, and they have not been very apparent. They have not been made very apparent, and that is very concerning. So when we ask questions related to cost, legal implications, are we upholding the original intent and spirit of this particular program that's based on enforcing immigration law? How are we mitigating unintended consequences of this initiative? Are we using the tools available to us to ensure that we are including as many stakeholders in our county who care about the issue? And what more can we learn about the work that we're doing with the consulate, with the various consulates rather, with ICE, with DPS, you name all of the other governmental organizations that are involved in this initiative. And though it is a responsibility of this court to make the decision as to whether this initiative should be renewed, the burden of proof is on the Sheriff's Department to substantiate the effectiveness of this program. And so far, I've seen an inability to give a complete history of the 2 years of this program. And for those reasons, I will be voting to oppose the renewal of the addendum for 287G.
Commissioner Fickus?
Well, I too have learned an awful lot, and I do appreciate everyone who has come up and talked, and especially those who have been here for the last 8 to 10 weeks. It's been a learning experience on both sides. Many people don't really have a clue of my background on some issues, but I spent 20 years from 1995 to 2015 yearly going, not once a year, but numerous times a year, going to see it at Acuna across from Del Rio, Texas, and working with my Rotary Club in Grapevine and the Rotary Club in Acuna, doing numerous projects every year in that city. Ask any mayor or presidente municipal about me, and they'll know who I am because of the work that myself and our Rotary Club has done in that area. So I've worked, helped in health clinics, painted hospitals, probably painted 10 different schools, taken computers, dental equipment, ambulances, buses. So I feel that I have seen the life across the border. Now, no, I haven't been to Guatemala, I haven't been to El Salvador, but I do feel that I have a significant, above average understanding of what's going on, at least along the border in Mexico. But I still go back to the rule of law. And this country's built on laws. And as long as our Sheriff's Department is looking at prisoners who have committed a crime in our county against our citizens, and in all likelihood might have been your friends that they committed those crimes against. And we're finding that many, many, many of these people have not committed one crime. They've committed numerous crimes in our community. Then we're a better community if they're not here. And I support continuing the program that Sheriff Wayburn has. So.
Commissioner Johnson.
Well, I've listened to the testimony for many hours. I have received many calls, emails at my office, demands on my office, threats in my office, which I don't appreciate from either side. But I go back 2 years ago, if I recall correctly, and the records can correct me, I believe this court voted unanimously to support this 287G law. Commissioner Allen was not on the court at that time, but I believe Commissioner Brooks and the rest of us here voted to vote for this. So with that said, if you're ready for a motion, I'm ready to make one.
I would just, I guess, to kind of state where I'm coming from. And as I said a lot of this last week, I believe very strongly that the Congress has failed us over the last 2 decades in coming up with an immigration policy that addresses the folks who are here, gives them a pathway to citizenship, and one that does not cost them an arm and a leg to achieve that. The estimates are that 15 to 16% of our population are undocumented. So that means in Tarrant County, we're talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 to 350,000 folks. As I started out looking at this and began to look at the information that I was able to get via our internet, our IT department, what I found were that the people that were in our jail on immigration holds were folks who had committed one or multiple Class B or higher misdemeanors. And just as any other class, any other group of folks, they're in the jail. So again, we're not talking about somebody who's been pulled over for a traffic violation, for a blinker being out, or for anything along that type of lines. I heard a lot of people today say, well, you're just going to vote on party lines because you're interested in getting reelected. You'll believe whatever you'll believe. But what I will tell you is I know that the fear exists among many of those estimated 300,000 folks. And for that, I am very, very sorry. And I wish desperately that Congress would get off the dime and would get that taken care of. Because no matter how much anybody wants to try to assure you, or those of you who are here undocumented, that you don't have to be afraid as long as you are not committing crimes, then I know it's not going to work. But for many of those folks who were on the lists that I looked at, I want them out of our country. Many of them stayed here, were convicted, were sent to the penitentiary, and upon their release after serving the crimes, they were deported. I cannot help but from what you told me today, the one hope that I did have was that for some of those lesser Class B, if there can be a term called lesser, those lesser misdemeanors, that at least to this point in time, you've been able to work through the system. Yes, you've been arrested, you were found not guilty, or you were released. And so hopefully that won't be on your record. And that at some point in the next year or so, you'll be able to work through the immigration process too. Does that make you any less fearful? I know it doesn't. And my heart goes out to you because, again, for the last 2 decades, none of the administrations that we've gone through, Democrat, Republican, and the like, have been able to get up there and resolve or put something on paper that would resolve this issue. And for that, I hold them responsible. In the report that the sheriff gave us this morning from ICE, what it said is that 261 folks were picked up by municipalities and turned over to ICE. If folks are being stopped for traffic tickets, it's not by the county. The ones that we're ending up with are Class Bs and above. And some of those, we can argue, are very minor. We can argue that all of them are picked up. They're not guilty until they go through the trial process. But folks, some of those folks that are in there, you don't want back out in your community, in Tarrant County, in any way, shape, or form. As far as the cost goes, yes, there are costs associated with this. Yes, we have training time, but we have training time for all of our officers in a lot of different ways, and in none of the other ways are we reimbursed anything. And for the ones that we are reimbursed, these are folks who are found guilty or who are here on multiple times being found guilty. It doesn't make this any easier of a vote, but what, at least in my heart, that I will continue to feel good about the vote that I take is the fact that as I look down the list, I didn't find Class C charges being held in our jail. And the folks that are here broke a law. They didn't, it's not just coming across the border. That is not, somebody mentioned, that's a civil offense. They were arrested because of a Class B or above misdemeanor. And I believe that we need to go through that process, reach a resolution, and then hopefully somewhere in the near future, we can get our Congress to make a decision and to adopt an immigration policy that will help those 11 million who are estimated to be here right now find an affordable and quick way to citizenship. So with that, if there's a motion.
Your Honor, may I say one more thing, please?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Johnson rightly points out that I voted for this 2 years ago. But I did not know then what I know now, and I repent of that vote.
Well, I had a long visit with the sheriff, and I have to ask him, after all the whipping that he took in here the other day and expected to take again today, do you honestly feel like this is a worthy cause and something that is helping our community? And do you want to continue this program? And his answer to me was yes on all questions. So with that, I will move approval of the addendum of the Memorandum of Agreement between U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement in Tarrant County.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes 3-2. Again, thank y'all. Please don't. There's a lot of, I understand a lot of strong feelings. Thank you all very much for coming down here and taking the time to express your opinions. With that, we will stand adjourned for 5 minutes. was kind of hoping Greg would. Now you better get up and get your mic. You'll be here for the rest of the day.
I'm going to get everybody's. That's okay.
Mr. Manius.
Members of the court, if we could now go back to the regular agenda, go to the administrator section, item 8A1. We're requesting that the Commissioners Court receive and file the single audit report for fiscal year which ended September 30th, 2018.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion will pass, I hope, unanimously.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I got stuck.
Tidwell.
We're asking the court to consider receiving and following the auditor's report for the review of the ATOS invoice is outlined in your court communication, and you have the departmental response.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Ms.
Move to
Glenn?
receive and file the personnel agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file the personnel agenda. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Good afternoon. We have 3 additional items for you this afternoon. The first is a waiver of terminal benefits. This is for public health. The division manager of immunizations position is currently vacant. They need all the help they can get with immunizations this year, and they request a waiver of 200 hours of terminal benefits with a net cost to the public health fund of approximately $6,800.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our third item is requesting changes to the table of organization for the Sheriff's Office. This is for 2 corporal positions, detention corporal positions, to assist with the jail management system implementation and development. The fiscal impact for this fiscal year to the non-debt capital fund will be approximately $52,800, with an expected impact to the next fiscal year's budget of approximately $48,000.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our final item is requesting changes to the table of organization for public health. We are looking for 2 reclassifications of a WIC area coordinator and a medical records clerk. These are 2 grant-funded positions. The cost to those grants will be approximately $1,500 and $800 respectively.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Hi, Em.
Hello. We have one item, public health, for your consideration, and that's approval to submit a grant application to the De Beaumont Foundation. And this is for a grant called Research in Action for training and leadership. And we are hoping that it will help us with staff retention.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa.
You know, Jack is just, he didn't have a good day yesterday.
No, first one out.
Yeah.
First one out. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, but if he'd been there, he'd have been saying, yeah, but at least we were there to get out.
That's true. That's true. We have two items for your consideration this morning. The first item is item number 2. It's an award recommendation for RFP number 2019-153. This is our annual contract for employee drug and alcohol testing. Our recommendation is to award to the primary vendor CoverTech and the secondary applicant Insight per contract terms.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our second and last item is regarding bid number 2019-158. This is an annual contract for traffic paint. We're requesting rejection of all bids and permission to rebid with revised specifications.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson?
I have 2 interlocal agreements, one with White Settlement, one with Lakeside. Have they both been approved by the DA's office? I move approval of item 8, L1, A, B, C, and D.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Appointments. Okay. You have before you the claims, including the addendum.
Move approval of the claims, including the addendum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the claims, including the addendum. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Briefing items, Mr. Mangus?
Your Honor, we do not have any briefing items at this time.
I've been briefed out today.
Do we have a closed session tonight?
Yes, we do.
Then we will recess our open meeting and proceed to close to discuss items exempt under section 551.071, 072, 074, 076, and 087 of the Texas Government Code.
Do we have lunch?
Yes, we have lunch.
Excellent. It gets cold up here.
I think we're just.
Well, after all that hot air, it didn't take it long to cool down.
Commissioner Allen wanted to know what this phone was for, so I had to tell him. It is the bat phone, right?
Having about returned from our closed session, there being no business to conduct at this time. JD, where are you?
We're live.
Good.
Go ahead.
We stand adjourned.